Welcome, everyone. So, this was not so much last minute, but I did decide to kind of push it back a few hours because I am very off schedule. But what we're going to talk about today is it's weird. It's like my beard gets kind of half in, half out. But what we're going to talk about today is the role of the divine feminine within just the general region of the Levant, specifically focusing on how it started, not even really being because in a lot of ways, using the term divine feminine and divine masculine is really only required when you're taught. I mean, I guess in a way, honestly, yeah, because in a sense, it's basically just a replacement term for god and goddess. Because when you're dealing with terms that don't quite fit into a paradigm where there's anything besides a singular, non-gendered god, there's it's hard to really connect the two. And so, basically, within a majorly monotheistic society, I think that's probably why that term gets used so much. But like at least from where I'm aware of it, it's a direct translation of the term like ruchad. It would be nukva de kudsha, which would literally be like the holy or divine feminine or divine female. But it's like it doesn't translate well, and that's the thing. It doesn't make sense within a monotheistic context, but it only makes sense when you look at it in the context it's in compared to what preceded it. But anyway, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. How are you doing, Graham?
Oh, pretty good. I was going to say, just to weigh in there, I see a difference between the divine feminine, the divine masculine, and like deities. Because, masculine.
That's exactly what I'm saying. But sorry.
Okay. No, I was just going to say, it's like, because masculine and feminine, they're more attributes. And it's like deities have portfolios over which they basically they're worshiped for.
Yeah. So to get started, I mean, we're going to go into some actual, proper peer-reviewed papers that I'm planning on using as citations for a paper that I'm writing for my final essay. But to start off with, I figured we could listen to something. Wait, where was it? Where did it go? I swear I just had it out. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Right. Here. So start off looking at. Actually, let me see if I can find a better. Wait. Shoot. Wait. Actually, yeah, Craig and Ferd's a much better channel. I mean, two old dudes is okay, but I don't know. There's some weird ideology that I don't quite agree with. Like he feels like he's biased towards a very specific idea. And again, it's one thing if you have the idea, but
introducing the hide and
I
seek.
just have an issue when people kind of interject their own biases in a way where it's not like making it clear that's what they think, but like. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, the only issue I have with Kragenford is he tends to have a little too much naturalistic bias for my taste.
Oh, I was referring to the other guy, but
no, I like Kragenford much better. I was just saying, to me, that's the limitation on him, is he's a little tends to look at the ancestors as a little more primitive than I think that, especially in thinking, than I think there were. And again, a little less, tends to put things off to naturalistic explanation when, it may or may not be warranted. That's all. I love his channel, though.
Let's see. Here.
Have a wife. Was there a Mrs. God? Well, you wouldn't think so if you've ever read the Bible. But in this video, we're going to look at a few pieces of archaeological evidence discovering items and rituals not discussed in the Bible that may suggest otherwise. And then we shall ask, if God did have a wife, then what happened to her? So, welcome to the story of Mrs. God, and welcome to Kragenford. So our story will start in 1967 in a cave in Gibbert el-Kom, a cave which had been used as a tomb in the middle of the 8th century BCE. And when examined by archaeologists, a hand carving was found on the wall of this cave. And above this hand carving, there were some incisions in the stone, which on closer inspection turned out to be an inscription. An incredibly difficult to read and somewhat ambiguous inscription, but it can be translated as saying, "Blessed be Yerihahu by Yahweh, and from his enemies, by his Asherah, he has saved him." Now, this is an interesting inscription as it shows Yahweh being with something called Asherah. Now, Asherah with a lowercase a is a pole or a staff used by cultists as a focus of worship. But Asherah with a capital A is the name of a goddess, normally associated as the wife or consort of the Canaanite god El, and she had a role of a fertility goddess or a mother goddess. So, what is a Canaanite goddess doing being mentioned with Yahweh? Well, the land of Canaan was the region that the Israelites would eventually take over as part of their promised land. And if you're interested in how that happened and how they took it over, then I'll link you to my Heaven and Hell video above, as that tells the story of how that happened and didn't happen and happened again and didn't happen, etc. And also, if you like the videos I'm making, then please hit the like and subscribe button. It means a lot to me, and it means more people like yourselves will watch these videos, and that will help me more. So thank you very much. Anyway, back to the cave and this tomb where we have this inscription that is a bit ambiguous, referring to Asherah as belonging to Yahweh. So was this Asherah the goddess Asherah or the staff Asherah in being Yahweh's? And does that make Asherah, if it was Yahweh's, his wife or consort? And if it does, it puts a question mark over the monotheistic religion of the Israelites, the religion that went into become Judaism and evolved into Christianity and Islam. They only have one God, and they certainly don't have room for another, and especially not a goddess at that, as it is a very male-focused religion. Well, the story I'm telling continues in 1975 in excavations at Kuntilit Ajad, which is in the Sinai Peninsula. And there within a two-roomed building, 2 storage jars were found, pithoi, and they were really large and dated to about the mid-8th century BCE. And on them, there were some pictures and hand carvings.
And like, what's interesting is, so these carvings, the inscriptions, they were written in Paleo Hebrew. And, someone could argue, oh, well, that wasn't, it wasn't the Hebrews, it just happened to be in a language connected. But like, you still have to contend with the fact that it's written, blessed be Uriah in the name Yah by Havayah, by Yodhe Vavhe, basically implying that this is blessed by God, therefore implying, okay, so you either have to accept that this is not an Israelite inscription and that it's referring to pagan gods, but also the Israelite God for some reason, or it's referring to the Israelite God and there's no issue with paganism because that taboo hadn't been established yet. Which one do you think it is?
Me, I was going to say is I'm not sure. One thing that does occur to me is Asherah was worshipped like in Egypt during the 18th dynasty. She was the female goddess of choice then, and it could be traveling Hebrews, traveling Israelites who just happened to be in the area, and again, a lot of those Paleo Hebrew carvings throughout the area were done by travelers and traders in order to mark stuff. And if wasn't that on a pottery shard or something, if I remember properly?
Yeah, I think he's about to show it.
And this was a mishmash of art and writing, and that has been translated on both jars, one saying Yahweh of Samaria and his Asherah, and on the other jar it says Yahweh of Canaan and his Asherah. Now, these jars have caused a little controversy, as there's a picture on one of them, which I'll show, that has been suggested as showing Yahweh presenting his genitals. However, the picture shown has often been altered, and it actually should look like this, which shows both male characters showing their genitalia, which isn't really any better than just one. However, not showing the correct image tries to force the Yahweh and Asherah image by less scrupulous scholars, but this isn't correct, and it is now known that the picture is actually a reference to the Egyptian god Bes. And Bes is a collective name for a group of dwarven deities from Egypt. So be careful if you're going to look up these pictures later to study. Now, it's also believed that the image you see on the jars was drawn after the inscription was written, and so the image and writing may be completely unrelated, which is likely considering the perceived topics of each. The inscriptions themselves are like the tomb inscription, ambiguous again, suffering the same problem of identifying who Asherah is. Is it the cultist pole, or is it the Canaanite goddess? So to help us understand this, to find out if there is a Mrs. God, we shall wind the clock back 10 or so years previous, from 1975 to about 1963, and another excavation, and this time is at a fortress at Tel Alad.
I got to get my stuff ready.
South of Jerusalem, was
guess what they found there?
The 9th to 6th century BCE, just before Nebuchadnezzar came along from Babylon to conquer the region. Now, within the western corner of this fortress, archaeologists have found the remains of a Judean temple, known as the House of Yahweh, the only such place ever found which has this name applied to it. And the temple itself looks similar design to King Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. And that's the temple which would eventually become the central place of Jewish religion. But this discovered temple was in use between the 9th century BCE and the late 8th century BC, which aligns to the time King Solomon's temple was in use. And this means that it was of a standard tripart design. So these temples had an inner courtyard where sacrifices were made.
Which ultimately, and so this is one of the really interesting things, there is almost none, if any, difference between the architecture, like in the design of the temple in Jerusalem and Phoenician temples in general. Like in the same way that you have a standard architecture applied to Greek temples or to Roman temples, how like it's literally the standard. Like this is what a temple looks like. Obviously, you can have the deck. Oh, hey, how are you? Sorry. Bit of indigestion, but no, ultimately that the bare bones of the temples were the same, and really the only difference later is the reforms that get applied to them and the statues and the stuff that they take out.
Well, has anybody suggested that actually was Solomon's temple? Because a lot of times this is one of the situations where you have archaeology that fits the time period properly, but we don't have any real archaeology in Jerusalem on Temple Mount to say that Solomon's temple actually existed during that time period. And again, that leaves the immediate one is like, well, maybe this was the location of Solomon's temple and it wasn't actually inside Jerusalem. Just a thought. Has anybody suggested that one? It seems like a natural suggestion.
So that, just to be clear, your question was what?
Well, they've had a lot of archaeology looking for Solomon's temple.
No, I know, just summarize in one question.
Oh, has anybody ever suggested that before? That this was actually Solomon's temple here rather than it was actually in Jerusalem?
Who are these people? Why do they pray here?
We feed it to the land. How do you get the leaven out the land? How do you get the leaven out the land? How do you get the leaven out the land?
I first heard about the Telerad Hebrew Israelites in 2017. We decided to send our correspondent Shelby Weiner to cover their Passover ritual.
Nationalistically, it's identity. Who are the blacks scattered throughout North, South, Central America? What type? Who are they according to nationality? And the Bible teaches us this, that we are the Hebrew Israelites. And that's the most important thing, I would say, identity. Language is identity, nationality, language, and land. So that's why we're here now, to begin the process of rebuilding Mount Zion, all right? Because this is real Jerusalem, not that Jerusalem. Language is identity, nationality, language, and land. So that's why we're here now, to begin the process of rebuilding Mount language and land. So that's why we're here now. Language is identity, nationality, language, and land. So that's why we're here now, to begin the process of rebuilding Mount
Sorry, I was
Zion.
muted.
All right, because this is real Jerusalem, not that Jerusalem. This is real
You
Jerusalem.
understand?
No one knows
So
about Mount Zion, the true Mount Zion.
they don't
No,
think
basically,
that
this land is desolate. So our land is waiting for us. Our culture's waiting for us.
they don't
and
think
our
that
Lord is waiting
Jerusalem
for
is
us.
Jerusalem.
We have enough proof that this is the tabernacle of David. We have enough proof that Mount Olive is a couple meters away, and the next mountain, which was Solomon.
Oh, I've seen lots of alternative theories along these lines, not
Although
just
the group was
them.
not very large, the responses we received for the news report we made were tremendous, with hundreds of thousands of views. So what do we have here? A group of African Americans who believe that Tel Arad is biblical Jerusalem. They worship this site, perform rituals in it 3 times a year, and connect it, in a way, to the salvation of the black people. Though it all sounded very obscure to me, I had to investigate this case. Tel Arad is considered one of the main archaeological sites in Israel. The place is divided to 2 sections: the lower city, with remains from the early Bronze Age, and the upper stage, with an impressive fortress, with some monuments stretching from the Iron Age to the Byzantine era. According to Dr. Yehuda Govrin, who excavated the site, the most significant chapter of Tel Arad is related to the story of the Israelite exile from Egypt, a story mentioned in the Book of Numbers.
The city is mentioned in the Bible as the city that prevented the Israelites from conquering the land of Israel after they returned from Egypt and moved south, following the spies. The Book of Numbers tells us about a great defeat of the Israelites in their battle against the kingdom of Arad. After the failure in Arad, the Israelites are taking a vow to take over the place and to boycott it.
One example of how Tel Arad brings evidence to the biblical story, according to Dr. Govrin, is the tombstones located inside the Canaanite houses.
Boycott it. In Arad, the Israelites are taking a vow to take over the place and to boycott it.
One example of how Tel Arad brings evidence to the biblical story, according to Dr. Govrin, is the tombstones located inside the Canaanite houses. Some of them were destroyed and reused as tables or other secondary uses.
According to the Bible, the Israelites came here, they were ordered to smash the tombs, and they left only one tomb standing. Other scholars say that this relic, which we found in the middle of the house, was actually a column that supported the walls. But I think that this was a tomb, which was used as an idol and used in every house. So according to this model, all the other rocks that we found in the middle of each house were idol tombs, which were used by every Canaanite family.
The other scholars Govrin refers to may shed light on a fierce battle between 2 schools of Israeli archaeology. On one side, the minimalist approach, which dismisses some of the stories of the Bible or says there's not enough physical evidence to support it. On the other side, the biblical approach, which backs the biblical story. And as Govrin represents, in a way, the traditional approach, his opponent is Professor Zev Herzog, who excavated this site in the past together with prominent archaeologist Yochanan Aharoni.
There are questions which scholars debate. They are mostly chronological and political. When was the first phase of building military fortress at Arad? The second would be the religious reform, whether it was Hezekiah or whether it was not. Some believe that it was just a destruction, not a decided dismantling of the temple, but the destruction by enemy.
Herzog says that some of the finds in Tel Arad indicates that some of the Israelites who lived there worshipped other gods. This may overshadow the belief that the Israelites believed in one God, and the cradle of monotheism came from the Exodus.
And what did they find on those
Dozens,
pillars?
I would say even hundreds of figurines, clay figurines, of many of women, usually attributed or assigned with Asherah, the goddess, which in some letters, as you may know, found not at Arad, but in other places, like Kuntilet Ajrud, and they mention Yahweh and Asherato, Yahweh and his consort, Asherah, that there were a couple of gods worshipped in Judah at that time. This contradicting the monotheistic approach, which was probably developed later, but at that time it was probably part of the legitimate and very common cultic procedure.
The upper stage of Tel Arad is perhaps the most notable
and very common cultic procedure.
Cultic what?
The upper stage of Tel Arad is perhaps the most notable area in this site. The magnificent compound here consisting of a big fortress from the time of the Israelite period of the Iron Age.
We are talking about the era of the kingdom of Judea. During that time, the kings of Judea established a series of fortresses in the Negev area and Arad, was the main one of them in the Beersheba Valley.
At the middle of the fortress, we see the Israelite shrine. It's indeed an impressive structure and a rare find from the Iron Age. At first, the researcher linked the shrine to King Solomon. Later, it was associated with King Hezekiah. One of the most interesting discoveries regarding this shrine found usage of cannabis for rituals. The shrine is now located at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. It's indeed an impressive structure and a rare find from the Iron Age. At first, the researcher linked the shrine to King Solomon. Later, it was associated with King Hezekiah. One of the most interesting discoveries regarding this shrine found usage of cannabis for rituals. The shrine is now located at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem.
The shrine is a rather small shrine in the fortress of Tel Arad. It is located in one of the corners of the fortress. It is constructed of four main elements. First of all, an open courtyard. That in the courtyard was a big altar, sacrificial altar. Around the courtyard, or to the north of the courtyard, were storerooms, and the main hall was the third element. It was not a very large hall. It was surrounded by benches, and in the center and in the inner part of the hall was located a small niche, which is the Holy of Holies. On top of each altar, there is a small...
I mean, there's a reason it probably wasn't it, because it's too small.
Black heap of organic material. When it was excavated, when the shrine was excavated, or a bit later, during the 60s,
they couldn't test it.
These organic material were sampled and examined in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. We tested it again a year ago, and basically we found two different components on each altar.
Frankincense and cannabis.
So we have on the big altar, we have frankincense that was burnt on animal fat. The biggest surprise was, of course, the cannabis. Since cannabis is not, it was not originated in Israel or in the ancient Near East, we assume that it was brought from afar. We know that cannabis smell, when you burn it, it's not such a special smell that you can't produce from local plants that are growing in Israel, for example, sage. So we assume that cannabis was not brought to Israel or to Judah because of its smell or its aroma. It was brought because of its psychoactive effects.
What else?
So we learn that Tel Arad was a significant site during the biblical era. It's mentioned in the Bible several times. What does it have to do with these folks?
David was right there. If you look at that mountain right there, you will see that David was right there, and he was first made king in Hebron. Hebron is right there. You see, so what David did, David came out of Hebron. The first act he did, he came out of Hebron down into this area surrounded by mountains, not on the top of the mountains, where Melchizedek Jerusalem was, but an area surrounded by mountains. And he took a fort. And that fort that he took, it we're standing in today. And that became known as the citadel of David. But David did something very unique. And all the archaeologists in Israel will tell you this. Where we're standing at right now is the first in history what is called a king's sanctuary.
In 2002, Hoshua Amariel came from Chicago, Illinois to Arad and decided that this is, in fact, biblical Jerusalem.
The actual Mount Sinai.
They started a new spiritual community, which they called Beit Israel.
Natural disasters, horrific war, violence, and persecution have forced millions of people to flee.
So, what are your thoughts so far?
Again, they fall into that category of they're not really hurting anybody, so I don't really have a problem with it. And, you know...
Honestly, the sad thing is, their idea probably could save so many lives. Just build the third temple at Arad.
Yeah, you know, that was always my thought is, if you got to build a third temple, you know, why does it have to be on the Temple Mount?
For the same reason that your kid doesn't want a new toy, he wants his old one.
The group performs.
Yeah, and they throw a temper tantrum if they don't get it. That fits too.
But like, it's what's to say that even like such a young child can tell the difference between it, like because it's funny because it's almost like, you know, at least intuitively, at least as we get older, you know, it seems like, oh well, you know, a new one would actually be better because then it's less worn down. But it's like, it's not a rational thing. It's about the attachment that people have to an idea that is located with, like, basically a non-tangible idea located within very tangible space, which then leads to conflict.
Well, it is sensible in the sense of you have life in a way that's working for you, and it's that if it's not broke, don't fix it. So why get rid of something that's perfectly fine like the old toy? That's not an unsensible approach to life.
I didn't say sensible. I said rational, and it is non-rational.
Well, how's that not rational?
Okay, is it rational that a child would rather have their old crusty snotty blankie than like a fresh new one?
Well, it is to the child. It's rational over a certain, data slash, principle set. The child doesn't have as wide of a set to compare over for the parent.
I would actually disagree, because I think that even as people get older, they still have this irrational attachment to, and again, I'm not saying that irrational is bad. It just means like it's more emotional than it is logical.
Oh, I'm agreeing with you that there is emotion involved there too, but I do see some rationality involved. I can't declare it 100% irrational.
I mean, I don't think anything's 100% rational or irrational, in the same way that nobody is 100%, good or 100% bad.
Well, I think when it comes to rational or irrational, you do have poles. You do have the 100% poles that can exist. I agree with you on people. People are much more messy than that.
Yeah.
On the holidays of Sukkot, Passover, and Shavuot, known in the Jewish tradition as the three pilgrimage festivals. And the Israelites were commanded to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, but Beit Israel gave their own interpretation of these holidays. This, for example, is how the community celebrates its version of Sukkot. According to the Jewish tradition, Jews are supposed to build a sukkah, a booth with branches as a roof. But here the group decided to take this ritual one step further and to live in the wilderness for 7 days, right in front of Tel Arad, which they see as biblical Jerusalem.
This on my head is it's a fruit tree. It's a willow. And this represents our Sukkot when we're not at our Sukkot. So we wear this on our heads. Like right now, if I were to leave, I would still be in Sukkot mode because I have my Sukkot on.
Well, for tabernacles, we set up tents for 7 days where we reenact the steps of Abraham. So Abraham was the first to do tabernacles. Also, unfortunately, I don't have my wreath on my head, but he was the first to do the wreaths, which commemorate tabernacles when you're away from the tent. And so we like to set up around Zion, so we're in view of Zion.
Remember that when the people came out of Egypt, they dwelled in booths for 40 years. They dwelled in tents for 40 years. The Sukkot branch that I showed you there was the branch that was used to hold up the tent. You see, so later on it became a religious symbol where people did it in a religious format. You see, but this here, what we're doing here, has nothing to do with religion. This is a part of the heritage and the day of remembrance and the memorial of our people coming out of the land of Egypt.
On the Jewish holiday of Passover, marking, according to the Jewish faith, the exile of the Israelites out of Egypt, the group performs a sheep slaughter ritual.
In the house of David and the children of Judah have returned to Mount Zion. And we call all of our people and the Jewish now to return and stand with us before Mount Zion, that we can bring peace to the world, a new world order according to the Torah. And the children of Judah have returned to Mount Zion.
According to the Jewish faith, the exile of the Israelites out of Egypt, the group performs a sheep slaughter ritual.
The house of David and the children of Judah have returned to Mount Zion. And we call all of our people and the Jewish now to return and stand with us before Mount Zion, that we can bring peace to the world, a new world order according to the Torah.
It's interesting though, because the thing that's very distinctive, at least to the best of my knowledge. Wait, what happened? Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, both the Dimona Hebrew Israelites and this group, I'm pretty sure they're inclusivist Hebrew Israelites, so they think they're Hebrew Israelites, which I personally don't have an issue with. The issue I have is when they start saying that Jews aren't Israelites, and from what I understand, because they just said, and the calling on the Jewish I didn't hear what he said after, but basically they're calling on people to stand together. They're not saying like, oh, you guys are fake, and we have our real Jerusalem here and you guys have fake Jerusalem over there. Like, given it's also a lot harder to be like that when you're dealing with Israeli government, but there's some pretty nasty groups in America, and like this, honestly, I think it would be fun to sit down and smoke a few joints with these guys, but I wouldn't even bother to talk to Hebrew Israelites in America just because you never know. Whereas like in Israel, it's a lot different.
No, definitely. It's like listening to these guys. It's like all I see them doing is they're sitting down and they're doing their interpretation of what the Bible says, and that's not causing them to go hurt anybody else. It's causing them to, spend a week camping in the desert. Okay, again, you're not hurting anybody else, and you're not attacking people for not joining it.
Yeah. Wait, what happened to the sound? That's
Did
weird.
you mute it by accident? I don't know.
I don't see how.
Purpose.
No, it wasn't me.
And would soon.
Dr. Francine Markovitz. Like the commander keep.
That was.
All right, let's see. I think it should.
Jews or Hebrew people ever found Mount Zion. That would start a new world order. So I have maps that prove and that show that this here is the actual area capitol.
We feed the levy to the land.
This is not the first case of African
maps that prove and that show that this here is the actual area capitol.
We feed the levy to
the land. That's a staff. I need a staff like that.
This is not the first case of African Americans seeing themselves as the descendants of the ancient Israelites. Groups like the Commander Keepers in New York and the Church of God and Saints of Christ are only few examples. What brings together these two issues, an African American movement and Judaism? And we sat down with Dr. Francine Markovitz, an anthropologist who has researched the issue for years.
From the very moments of enslaved Africans' exposure to Christianity,
Dr. Francine Markovitz, an anthropologist who has researched the issue for years.
From the very moments of enslaved Africans' exposure to Christianity, three aspects of the Bible really entranced them. The first we can say is that the figure of Jesus provided solace and provided an example for what we now call redemptive suffering. That is, in this world, you strive, you toil, you suffer, and then in the next world, if you're a good person and you have lived according to the rules of God, you will enter heaven. That brought a lot of solace, a moral answer for why are we going through this kind of pain, both through slavery and through the Jim Crow laws of horrible discrimination in the US. The second, and perhaps even more important aspect of the Bible were these biblical personages who showed a lot of strength, a lot of gumption, and brought forth the message that freedom is God's will, both in the stories of the patriarchs and the matriarchs, in the story of Noah, in the stories of David HaMelech, but more than anything, of course, the story of Exodus really captured early on Black people in America's religious fervor and social imagination, because it proved once and for all that God does not want slavery. Later on in the 19th century, one of the more obscure psalms from the Bible started to circulate with after emancipation and with a Protestant revival in the United States. And that, of course, is Psalm 68:31, which is, every African American knows this one: princes shall come out of Egypt, and Ethiopia shall soon stretch forth her hands unto God. And people read this as a message that Black people, that African people were not condemned to slavery, were not condemned to second-class citizenship, had a godly mission, a divine purpose, and would soon be stretching their hands out and taking leadership roles and living according to civilizations that were hardly recognized in white America and in white Europe. There are some much more radical Hebrew Israelite camps in the US, like the very radical group of Black Muslims who say that the white Jews stole Judaism from the Black Jews, that it was originally, again, an African and Afrocentric religion.
One question that comes to mind is, why didn't the so-called Black Hebrew Israelites convert to Judaism? Francine tries to explain.
There are Black Americans who have converted to Judaism, but many don't. And many don't because they feel that what they call white Jews are in control of those institutions and that they are not accepted as full-fledged members. That's one reason. Another reason is because they feel spiritually that they are indeed the descendants of the original Hebrew Israelites, and there's no reason to convert. Spiritually, they found their place, they have their own leaders, and they want to recognize Judaism as an African or an African-centric religion. So that, for example, the Hebrew Israelites of Dimona, they view Dimona as the second Jerusalem, metaphorically, in Northeast Africa.
One of the most famous Hebrew Israelite communities is not far from here. In the end of the 1960s, the group arrived here from Chicago, led by their spiritual leader, Ben Ami, settled in the...
So it was going a bit far away from the original purpose, but anyway.
Yeah, no, interesting. Like I said, the natural thing that occurs to me is always when you have a physical site that you don't, that fits the same story as, a story that you don't have archaeology for. To connect the two seems a natural connection to me, and usually somebody else has done it before me. That's why I was wondering.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the Divine Feminine.
Yeah, let me find, let's see, history. Where was it?
Now you're going specifically in the paper with Asherah and
so
the rise.
I'm basically going to look at how the figure of Asherah gets transformed. I'm probably going to look at a bit of what is it from the Baal cycle in Ugarit, looking at how Asherah is depicted, then looking at how like God is depicted in a feminine form, but like in such a way that it goes to fit this typology, and then looking at how it gets like taken up and appropriated in Christianity as not just the Holy Spirit, but as Mary herself as Queen of Heaven, at least in Catholicism.
Yeah, no, that connection, it's an easy connection to go like from Inanna down to Mary, Queen of Heaven. That's a simple, that there should be more than enough scholarship for you there. On the Baal cycle, was that Ashara in there, or was that Astarte? Because I know Astarte was the primary female goddess in Ugarit, if I remember right.
So I'm going to pull that up in a second, but I actually have to use the restroom real quick, so I'll just have this going and then I'll be right back.
Okay.
The hidden goddess, the banished and shattered goddess, the lost, the forgotten. Who was she? Who praised her name? And what fate befell her? There are no easy answers to these questions. Details have been erased and distorted over the centuries. Her altars have been toppled and her sanctuaries razed. She is cloaked in controversy, welcomed by few and opposed by many. Yet despite the desperate attempts by reformers and zealots to erase her name from collective human memory, remnants of her reign lingers, waiting to be discovered in the most unlikely of places, the Bible. To understand her story, we must for a moment go back to the beginning. Although scholars now date the earliest examples of goddess worship to approximately 25,000 years ago, our story began in the 2nd millennium BCE. Great civilizations had emerged along the great Euphrates and Nile rivers. All-powerful kings and pharaohs shaped the destiny of all humankind. Empires rose and fell, combined and dispersed. For the common people of the era, survival was oftentimes incredibly difficult. Political turmoil, devastating poverty, and anxiety over the mysteries and danger that seemed to lurk around every corner permeated all aspects of life. The world was, as it always has been, in the midst of great change and evolution. To interpret the chaotic environment in which they lived, to glean from the unknown some sense of direction, the people of antiquity turned their thoughts to the higher realms of the gods and goddesses. Just as their ancestors before them, the people of the ancient Near East recognized the divinity of the natural world. They looked down at their feet and saw grass and grain sprout forth and saw the goddesses of life and fertility. They looked up at the gathering clouds and saw familiar faces of the sky gods and life-bringing storm gods. They felt the celestial in every breath of the wind, every cry of a newborn child, and every turn of the seasons. Throughout the entire ancient world, men and women searched for meaning beyond themselves and found a host of gods and goddesses gazing back at them. A myriad of vibrant and beautiful mythologies sprang from the ancient person's search for the divine. Every aspect of life and death was controlled by a ruling deity. Those beings worked together and sometimes against each other to control and guide the development of the cosmos and of civilizations. And although the details frequently varied between empires, some forces emerged again and again. Among the most beloved and ancient was the Great Mother Goddess. Her name would change, her realm would grow and shrink, but for thousands of years her importance stood as testimony to her worth and power. The significance of goddess worship in the ancient world cannot be overstated. Men and women alike looked to the comfort of the Mother Goddess and petitioned her for blessings of love and progeny. Her role in the universe often reflected the role of mortal women. She was a mother, wife, daughter, and sister. She oversaw the fruits of agriculture, ran the household, and healed the sick and injured. From her body sprang not only children, but the earth itself. She was the foundation of the faith of millions, recognizing the duality of nature and the need for both male and female energies. The Mother Goddess stood as an equal to the Father God for millennia. But in a rather unremarkable corner of the Near East, the idea of one true God had begun to grow. A small group of people were about to step off the well-worn paths of their ancestors and begin their own extraordinary journey. Scholars and theologians have long debated the exact details of the founding of Israel and its radical monotheistic ideals. The historical truths have been lost to us through the centuries, due either to the simple passing of time or to the revising of history by a host of biblical authors, often writing hundreds of years after the events they recorded. However, the Pentateuch, or first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, provide an account of the forming of the Israelite nation as the people themselves believed it to have occurred. Once slaves in the land of Egypt, Moses, a prophet of the God Yahweh, had delivered the people from their bonds in an epic known simply as the Exodus. After their miraculous escape, the people wandered in the wilderness until finally they came to the base of Mount Sinai. Descending on the mountain as fire and smoke, Yahweh revealed himself to Moses and the assembly of fearful, awestruck people and delivered his laws and commandments for his newly amassed followers. Moses and Yahweh then formed a covenant declaring, among other things, that thou shalt have no other gods before me. And the foundations were laid for the 3 great monotheistic religions we know today, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Up until this moment in history, the earth and heavens have been filled with a host of gods, goddesses, and other powerful divine creatures. Their existence was unquestioned. The very cycles of life were set into motion by the divinities. Yahweh, however, sought to dethrone these other supreme beings and set himself apart and above them. This was a profound shift in the dynamics of the cosmos. Within polytheistic religions, there had always been room for another god. Conquered nations often blended their own deities with those of their new masters and vice versa. Some gods and goddesses were so powerful that their influence stretched across many nations and throughout hundreds of years. From this constant melding of people and ideals, new beliefs flourished and religious tolerance was natural. No one god or goddess set out to claim superiority, but Yahweh, the God of Israel, had declared himself king, above the reproach of man or God. Despite what some biblical adherents would like us to believe, the Israelite people did not spring from the dark ages of paganism fully formed and faithful to no God but Yahweh. Instead, they shared many of the same beliefs as their contemporaries in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Canaan. Moses may have agreed to have no God before Yahweh, but it was a promise that his people often found difficult to abide by. Exodus 32 tells us that even before Moses came down from Mount Sinai, his people had cast a calf of gold to worship and give thanks for their liberation from Egypt. Monotheism was a new and difficult concept to grasp, and the reign of the gods and goddesses would not easily be disposed. Although the Bible is clear that Yahweh transcends the bounds of gender, that his form is unknowable and crafted of pure spirit, he is unmistakably male in his depictions. The Hebrew language, the original language of the Bible, assigns a gender to every noun, pronoun, verb, and adjective. Without fail, the words used to describe Yahweh are unquestionably male, and no efforts were ever made to alter that perspective. To some extent, Yahweh's maleness was irrelevant. He simply absorbed the powers and characteristics of his rival gods. Yahweh undoubtedly filled the role of the father god for the Hebrews, just as El had done for the Canaanite people. But Yahweh did not stop with the conquest of the gods. He was the one and only, and there was no room for the goddess in his heaven or earth. Unfortunately for Yahweh, and the early champions of monotheism, the goddess would not be easily conquered. She would not relent her powers quietly to this new entity, and her followers would not cast her aside. The overarching maleness of Yahweh left a gaping void in the hearts of the people where once the divine feminine in all her incarnations had resided. No longer was there a great mother to nurture and guide her children. No longer did women appear as an equal, complementary figure to the men. Men were firmly in control of heaven and below on earth. The patriarchy of the Hebrews was soundly in place. They corrupted the goddess's names, razed her groves, smashed her altars, and defaced her icons, and yet she persisted. Scholars now understand that the Hebrew people worshipped a multitude of deities, especially the goddess in her various manifestations. This, of course, was utterly scandalous when the evidence first began appearing, and even today is vehemently denied by many of the faithful. But a careful reading of the Bible, especially the Old Testament, reveals that not only did the people retain parts of their pagan learnings, but that often these beliefs and practices fused with their worship of Yahweh. Especially among the common people, paganism blended with the one true God to form a plethora of varieties and flavors of Yahwism, and many of those focused on the goddess who filled the chasm left by a universe ruled solely by the masculine. Verse after verse in the Bible describes the early church leaders and rulers relentlessly trying to annihilate the worship of other deities. Often, they appear to succeed. That is, until the next generation of Hebrews came into power and restored the ancient practices. It was a battle that was repeated again and again throughout the Bible. Eventually, Yahweh did prove victorious over the ancient pagan gods. The old beliefs have been twisted and perverted in such a way that the faithful began to fear the paths of their ancestors. The old gods seemed foreign and the goddess an abomination. Monotheism and patriarchy took firm control over the course of humanity, for better or for worse. The goddess had finally been destroyed, her domain fully assimilated by Yahweh. Or was she? Perhaps there is something in human nature that yearns for a great mother figure. Carl Jung, father of analytical psychology, certainly believes so. He saw the mother goddess as an archetypal figure, always at work in the human psyche. Archaeological evidence has shown that it was the goddess that first appeared when man turned his thoughts to higher realms. For thousands of years, she walked among her children, mortal and god alike. Yahwism did, undeniably, a thorough job of extinguishing her hold on the people's hearts, but her seeds had already been planted. We see her shadow throughout the Bible, and in the material remains of a people whose beginnings now lie in mystery and myth. She is there still, awaiting rediscovery, hidden but not dead. The divine feminine remains, buried among the pages of countless authors in many subtle ways. She first emerges as the unknown wife of God before being thoroughly dismantled within the Garden of Eden, and although her destruction was almost certain, she rises again as light and glory before birthing the child of God. She fills the spirit of the powerful and rebellious. Her symbols stand within paradise and the Temple of Jerusalem. From the past, her names call out to us, from Asherah to Mary Magdalene, and her presence still lingers. If you would like to learn more about the hidden goddess, then I recommend you start with our book, The Hidden Goddess, Uncover the Goddesses Buried Within the Bible. If you've enjoyed this video, then please give it a like and subscribe to our channel for weekly videos. And as always, have a nice day.
So I'm trying to find the Epic of Baal or the Baal cycle online, but having a bit of trouble finding that.
Yeah, I was going to say the pattern that I noticed for early Canaanite religion is that every city had its own main god, male god, and then also with the female consort. And again, that's the standard pattern that you have throughout the most ancient cultures. You know, it's like in Egypt, you had the Ogdad, where it's like that they came in 4 pairs of consorts, male and female. You have similar things happening in most of them. So it's like each of the cities tended to have one male god and then one female god. And it was only a later development that you had really other gods getting imported for multiple worship. It's like the first form of worship in cities was their city god and their city goddess. Not quite monotheism, but I guess duotheism maybe. Tag.
Maybe like ditheism, but I do think it's important to state that in a lot of cases the Hieroskamos of the city would also have a child.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that was part of the whole pattern.
So like one of the interesting ones though, which I wonder, because I was looking at different sources. Sorry about that. So I was looking at different sources. I found one text that someone had written where it was talking about the dual what is this? The dual paternal lineage of Baal, how he's the son of Dagon, I think, as well as the son of maybe, who was it? I forgot.
Wasn't Baal like the son of El, or at least HaElyon, right? Let me pull Baal up real quick.
All right, well, I'll start this. So this is interesting. And Jesus answered, "Happy are you, or Ashrei," which it's from the same root Asher as Asherah. Happy are you that hunger for the truth, for I will satisfy you with the bread of wisdom. Happy are you, Ashrei, that would cast off the power of Satan, for I will lead you into the kingdom of our mother's angels, where the power of Satan cannot enter. The Gospel of Peace, Book 1.
For hundreds of years, we've been told that our mother is a bloodthirsty demon, and anyone communing with her is communing with Satan. But what happened? For hundreds of years, we've been told that our mother is a bloodthirsty demon, and anyone communing with her is communing with Satan. But what happens when we step beyond the veil of deception and reveal the truth behind the suppression of the divine feminine? Modern religion tells us women are the root of all evil. From Genesis to Revelation, we're told the female is responsible for the fall of mankind. To fully understand why this is, we must examine the Bible and how it was compiled. Unbeknownst to many, there are literally dozens of Gospels excluded from the Bible for a variety of reasons. These Gospels include the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Jesus Christ, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and the Gospel of the Essenes. In 325 CE, the Council of Nicaea was commissioned by Constantine to unify the ever-growing number of Christian factions and resolve disagreements surrounding the divinity of Jesus. This paved the way for the official canon, which is now known as the Bible.
Christians and non-Christians alike are beginning to have a greater understanding of the pagan origins of Christianity and the merger of traditions by Emperor Constantine. This includes changing the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday to appeal to the followers of Mithra, creating icons of Christian saints and displaying them as solar deities with the halo or sun behind them, Christianizing the celebration of the vernal equinox and merging it with the Ostarist tradition of Easter, and celebrating the birth of Christ on December 25th, the winter solstice.
For more information about this, please see our video, The Ritual of Ostara, at youtube.com/Beyond the Veil.
It is important to note that paganism is not actually a religion, but rather a derogatory term made up by the church to label any religion that is non-Christian. This includes Buddhism, Hinduism, Wicca, and under the strictest definition of the word, Judaism, which is supposedly the foundation for Christianity.
Islam is also considered a pagan religion, even though the Quran and the Bible are very similar, both deriving their foundation from Abraham and his, well, willingness to murder a child.
The main difference is that in Christianity, it's believed that Isaac was taken to the mountain to be sacrificed to God, while Islam believes it was his brother Ishmael. However, the Quran reveres Jesus as the highest prophet, second only to Muhammad. But we'll get more into this in later videos when we illustrate how Jehovah, Yahweh, Yahuwah, Allah, and Elohim are one and the same.
Since Constantine created the state religion of Christianity, dozens of denominations have branched off, all holding the belief that theirs is correct. Today, many would say that Catholicism and Orthodoxy are not actually Christian, even though they all believe in Jesus Christ, and they all read from the same holy books. The main difference being that the Catholic version has 73 instead of 66, but they were all authorized by Constantine.
The Roman Empire upheld the law of paterfamilias, which meant that a man had absolute power over the people in his family, including his wife, children, and slaves. This meant that at a whim, he could banish, disown, or even kill any of them.
A first-century jurist, Valerius Maximus, recounts an incident of a husband beating his wife to death because she had consumed wine. Because his neighbors all agreed with this action, Paul the Apostle consumed wine. Recounts an incident of a husband beating his wife to death because she had consumed wine. Because his neighbors all agreed with this action, Paul the Apostle created the New Testament domestic code, which subjugated Christian families to the same standards as paterfamilias, thus forbidding women from having any kind of authority or power, not only in the church, but in domestic life as well. Hence the saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
This ideology is well aligned with the foundation of Mosaic law. Deuteronomy 21:10 details how slave wives can be captured in battle. Exodus 21:20 includes instructions on how to beat your slave within an inch of their life because they are considered property. Exodus 21:7 authorizes a man to sell his little girls into sex slavery under the guidelines of Scripture. Deuteronomy 22:28 states that if a man is caught in the act of raping a little girl, he must pay her father 50 pieces of silver. She then becomes his wife/property.
These ideologies are repeated in the New Testament as well. 1 Corinthians 14:34 states that women are to remain silent and claim no authority. Colossians 3:22 tells all slaves to obey their earthly masters. And in case someone gets the idea that these rules may be somewhat unfair, Romans 13 states that all authority is ordained by God, and therefore you should never question any of this.
Why are they showing Hitler
Despite
now?
the pagan influence by Constantine and the politically motivated, misogynistic agenda of the Council of Nicaea,
this is so
most Christians
reductive,
cling
and
to
it's
the
not true what they
Constantine
just
canon
said.
as the Word of God,
Trying
and
to say
dismiss
that
the
Jesus
Gnostic
Christ is
Gospels
Zeus and
altogether,
Krishna.
including the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and the Gospel of the Essenes.
Now, there is quite a bit of controversy surrounding the Gospel of the Essenes, so I would urge everyone to read the scripture for themselves and determine if the message resonates with you. However, because of the consistent pattern of feminine suppression in modern Christianity, to me it makes sense why the church would go to such lengths to suppress this very important gospel.
It is said that the Essenes were mystics and students of the ancient mystery schools. They practiced astral travel, divination, healing, and meditation. They were essentially a pagan sect of Judaism.
According to many scholars, John the Baptist was Essene and recognized Jesus as an ascended master. It is believed that Joseph and Mary were also Essene and took Jesus to Egypt and India in his early years to train him in the mystery school traditions.
The word Mary may not have been a name, but rather a title for a high priestess or free woman, not bound by the laws of paterfamilias, and therefore a threat to the Holy Roman Empire. This is why there are so many mentions of Marys in the Bible, including Mary the mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, Mary the mother of Joses, Mary the wife of Clopas, Mary of Bethany, Mary the mother of Mark, Mary of Rome, and many more.
The Gospel of the Essenes, also known as the Gospel of Peace, shows Jesus in a very different light. Most of the text acknowledges both the mother and the father in heaven, as well as the earthly mother, and this is obviously contrary to the laws of paterfamilias. Jesus is quoted as saying,
"Your mother is in you, and you in her. She bore you, she gives you life. It was she who gave you your body, and one day you will give it back again. Happy are you when you come to know her and her kingdom, if you receive your mother's angels, and if you do her laws. I tell you truly, he who does these things shall never see disease, for the power of our mother is above all, and it destroys Satan and his kingdom, and has rule over all your bodies and all living things."
The words of Jesus appear to be aligned with his upbringing as an Essene, balancing both the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. He is quoted as saying,
"Pray every day to your heavenly Father and your earthly mother, that your soul becomes as perfect as your heavenly Father's Holy Spirit is perfect, and that your body becomes as perfect as the body of your earthly mother is perfect. For if you understand, feel, and do the commandments, then all for which you pray to your heavenly Father and your earthly mother will be given to you."
Is it just me, or does this seem to be implying that when it's saying earthly mother, it's not referring to like the human mother, but rather to Mother Earth as opposed to Father Heaven?
Yeah, that's my interpretation as well. And it's Rome worshipped their goddesses. It wasn't like they banned goddess worship at all. They're grossly oversimplifying a lot of the issues. Tag.
Wait, what did they say? Can you give me an example? I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. You're definitely right. I know a few things. It's too much for me to keep track of everything.
Oh, they were talking about when they talked about Paul when in Rome do as the Romans. It was grossly oversimplifying the Roman, social situation, the role of women in Rome, and that basically implying that the Romans had banned, the worship of the mother goddess, and where they didn't, that was a important part of Roman society. They had strong female traditions from the Vestal versions all the way on to the female rights that caused Caesar to get divorced. Tag.
All right, sweet. I managed to find an index of this. I want to make sure that, let's see. So do you know, I can't tell if this is true or not. I mean, there's just so much BS. So tell me what you think of this. It was in 1928 that Edmond Bordeaux-Jacquely, Seke, Edmond Bordeaux-Jacquely first published his translation of the Essene Gospel of Peace, an ancient manuscript discovered in the secret archives of the Vatican as a result of limitless patience, faultless scholarship, and unerring intuition. Is that true? Have you ever heard of this?
I mean, I haven't heard of this one. I don't think I've heard of this one specifically. I know that people have found stuff in there. Now, whether what they found in there is legitimate or not is another story, or whether they are just claiming they found
Damn
it.
it. No. Damn. If only this were really dang. So here's what I found. The Essene Gospel of Peace is, and then the next words are crossed out, is an ancient tome filled with arcane secrets found deep in the vaults of the Vatican Library. So that's all crossed out. Is health woo bullshit written by Edmond Bordeaux Seke and published in 1928. In it, Jesus tells his disciples to eat raw vegetables, take frequent enemas to cleanse the colon, and not to eat meat. If you haven't figured it out already, it's a hoax just like every other set of religious scriptures that claim divine authorship, such as the Holy Bible. People are still buying the hoax almost 90 years later, even though the Vatican has denied Jacques Seke ever visited its library or that the manuscripts he cited ever existed. Another claimed source was a manuscript in the monastery of Monte Cassino, Italy, conveniently destroyed in World War II. Yeah, so it's bull. Damn.
Well, you notice I was suspicious, and even then, with what they're saying is, it's borderline bull.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd never heard of this phrasing of earthly mother. It doesn't exist within this context. At least not that I've ever heard of it.
I could see a lot of people using it, in the modern world. Just you know.
Yeah, like your human mother as opposed to like your heavenly mother. But like within this context, by saying earthly, it implies human or implies mundane as opposed to some sort of divine, like, what would it be? Like mundos, or like, like its own world, like to literally deify the world. But that doesn't seem to be what's going on here. It just seems to be
Actually, that seems to be what the people behind the video, that seems to be what their messaging is.
Oh, you mean trying to imply that humans are gods?
No, that Mother Earth is the god, and they're very much in that whole nature religion, Wicca sort of approach kind of thing, and that very much seems to be what they're that they're in support of, that feminine Wicca side of things versus the patriarchy. And
Wicca, what?
Again, it's one of those, to me, that's just a false battle. That if you're fighting that battle, you're wasting everybody's time, because it's how does the matriarchy and patriarchy get along, not which one happens to be on top. Tag.
Also, it's interesting how here it says that your soul becomes as perfect as your heavenly Father's Holy Spirit is perfect. But it's not identifying the Holy Spirit with the divine feminine here. It's outright saying the earth is the divine feminine in this case. So yeah, it seems too good to be true.
A Hungarian professor by the name of Edmund Seekley discovered the Gospel of the
No,
Essenes
he
in the
didn't.
Vatican Library. Shortly after he translated the manuscripts, the Vatican quickly moved to discredit him. First, by denying the existence of these documents, then 50 years later by stating that he never even had access to the archives to begin with. But the big question is, why have these documents been suppressed for so long?
The Gospel of the
Is it possible that he's just lying and he's saying that in order to be like, well, it's either me or them. One of us is lying, and I mean, very clearly the Vatican has lied about shit before, but like, if this is the case, I mean, has he? Where's the Aramaic version of this? Like, I want to see the Aramaic. I'm not great at translating Aramaic, but I can fucking try. But
yeah, I mean, just because the Vatican lies about a whole lot of stuff doesn't necessarily mean that they actually suppressed an ancient document that he just wrote. Tag.
Yeah, it's kind of like, the boy that cried wolf. Like, yeah, the boy was lying all those times, but eventually the wolf was there, and then he got eaten by the wolf. So it's like, yeah, maybe the Vatican doesn't have the best reputation, but that doesn't mean that you should outright dismiss what they have to say.
Exactly. If they sit there and say, no, that never existed, that would be a good reason why they couldn't have suppressed what didn't exist.
the Essenes focuses primarily on living in harmony with our Mother Earth and balancing the sacred feminine and masculine.
And having lots of enemas, apparently.
Needless to say, the book has been criticized as a fake, a forgery, and merely an attempt to steer Christianity towards New Age beliefs and ideologies.
Oh,
For
hey,
me
Blavatsky.
personally, the Gospel of the Essenes.
Whenever I have to go to the bathroom, I say, ooh, I've got to take a Blavatsky. It's because she's responsible for so much horrible ideology. I normally wouldn't do that, but it's a little bit of harmless fun at the expense of someone who's been long gone.
Speaks truth and portrays Jesus as an ascended master, one who has achieved balance
Oh,
between the sacred
right.
feminine
I don't know
and
why
the
Ascended
sacred
Master
masculine.
didn't,
So the obvious question is,
when he said it
why
before,
has
it
the
should
church
have
gone to
rung
such
the bell,
lengths to
hold
suppress
on,
the divine
something
feminine?
here's not right.
And who was Mary Magdalene? Was she really a whore? Or was she
Wait a
the
second.
personification of the...
So maybe the alabastron was so that she could give Jesus an enema. I think that's what the Essene Gospel of Peace was saying, right? I mean, they very clearly it was already talking about like colonic cleanses. So if you're talking about Jesus and Mary, then the obvious conclusion would be that that's what the alabastron was for.
I think we may be able to find a philologist somewhere who could agree with you.
Ugh. Yeah, you ever have someone who wants to agree with you out of like truth, but because they don't like you, they're like, they wouldn't even give it a given. I mean, in this case, this is complete bullshit. I mean, this isn't a real text, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of our friends, ended up taking it as real.
Well, if it supports what they believe, of course they're going to take it as real.
Yeah, but except it wasn't an enema. It was actually it was like I don't know.
Let's just go on. Yeah.
the divine feminine.
We'll answer these questions and more in the next chapter of the Divine Feminine Rising.
In the meantime, please share this video with someone who needs to hear the message.
No thanks.
And don't forget to like, comment, and
I'm already
subscribe
sharing
for
it
more
enough
insights
as it
from
is.
Beyond the Veil.
All right, let's see. Is there a third one? Yeah, here. I have a feeling this isn't going to be that good.
Award-winning, chef-approved always pan that sold out over 30.
Wait, what even is this? I don't know if this is even relevant.
Bloodthirst happens when we step beyond the veil of deceit. Per Constantine.
Yeah,
Night and
honestly.
day, man and woman. After all, it takes two to create.
When monotheism was introduced, the underlying intention was to offset the balance of the human consciousness. When a person is unbalanced, they're far.
Yeah, this doesn't seem. I mean, I already knew it wasn't really a good source, but like, I was like, might as well see what it is. But no, it was just complete cuckoo. Okay, maybe not complete cuckoo, but enough cuckoo that I don't really feel like watching it. So let's see. Oh, I know what we could do. Okay, so ball cycle. I might not be able to find it properly. Let's see. Oh, you know what's interesting? Here, let me actually see if I can pass. Let's see. You know what's interesting?
What?
So, have you ever heard the term Baal Teshuvah?
I've heard it, but I don't have a clue what it means.
So it means like master of returning. Basically, it's like someone who didn't grow up religious and becomes like religious, like, within a Jewish context. But what's interesting is I just connected the fact that Teshub was because the shuv, it's where you could actually translate teshuva as teshubah. And what's interesting is that Teshub was the Hurrian weather god as well as the head of the Hurrian pantheon. Let's see, where was it?
Yeah, no, that connection with Yamad, which deserves some look at for another potential historical predecessor that got melded into the Bible as part of the Jewish history. Because I don't know if you ever looked into Idrimi, he's very, very, similar to Sargon. Large parts of his biography overlap with large parts of David's biography.
Interesting. All right, let's see. Can I find this here? All right, here.
Long ago, when the world was a stage for divine forces of nature, the kingship of the gods was not a definitive matter. The time of kingship was waning for El, head of the Canaanite pantheon. From his holy mountain at the base of the two rivers which supplied all the world's fresh water, he ruled the world and the gods within his divine assembly. Eons before, El had doubtlessly overthrown even older gods, but now it was his time to withdraw as king. Ashra, the lady of the sea and mother of the gods, El's consort, accompanied him to visit with Prince Sea, Judge River.
Wait. Let's see. Her title is
Ashra, the lady of the sea and mother of the gods.
So, okay, this is crucial. Lady of the Sea. So, let's see if I can find it. So, one of the alternate etymologies of Mariam is actually Mariam, or Mariam, which could be mistress or lady, and then Yam is sea, lady of the sea. Mariam or Martiam. Now, what's interesting is, oh wow!
What about Moses' sister Miriam?
See, that's the thing. That makes so much more sense because, so look at this. Miriam etymology. It's connected to Moriam, like bitter of the sea. Wait, what? Wait, what? Hold on. How is this? Let's see. In antiquity, it was variously etymologized as rebellion, like because Mirma, so like Maram, because you have Mariam. So I see how they connected it to rebellion. Mar is bitter, Yam is sea. Let's see. I don't know how they're getting strong waters. Wait, Mariam. No, I don't see it. Exalted one. I don't know either. Ruling one. That one. They're just interpreting from like Mara, but which for none of these make sense. It makes so much more sense that it would be holy crap. Wait a minute, Oriam. Whoa. Alternatively, the name can be interpreted as Star of the Sea, Stella Maris, if taken as a contracted form of the Hebrew Me'or Yam. Ma'or Yam, luminary of the sea. Yet this strikes as a very free interpretation. Rashi, an 11th century Jewish commentator of the Bible, wrote that the name was given to the sister of Moses because of the Egyptians' harsh treatment of Jews in Egypt. Rashi wrote that the Israelites lived in Egypt for 210 years, including 86 years of cruel enslavement that began at the time Moses' elder sister was born. Therefore, the scroll was called Miriam because the Egyptians made life better, Mar, for her people. Interesting, but I'm telling you, it's much more likely that it's from Lady of the Sea. And if that's the case, look at this. Wait, where were we? So, let's see. One of Asherah, the Lady of the Sea. Asherah Maryam. You can't make this up.
You could make it up, but you don't have to since it's already in the text.
But
You just went to the sources, Ariel.
Okay, so here I'm gonna make a note of this. So let's see.
I did find another kind of interesting aside that I don't know how much it ties in here, but it definitely ties into Asherah. Have you ever heard of Ishara?
Yes. Ishara.
Yeah. Because it definitely, I can't believe there's no sort of tie-in, no sort of connection.
So you could almost think of Asherah as, and again, it's not a perfect parallel, but it's almost like Asherah, or wait, I'm trying to think. Which pantheon is this in? Is it Hurrian?
Yeah. Hurrian, and it's also with it's out of Ebla, so you're dealing with that's the same general area you're dealing with here with the Ugaritic cycle.
Wait, so what was the question again? Sorry, I forgot.
Oh, connections between Ishara and Asherah.
Oh, yeah. So I mean, basically, at least that form of her is much more like the mother of the gods as opposed to the wife of the main god.
Because they link her with Dagon.
Wait, as the wife of Dagon?
Yeah.
Interesting, because so Dagon was, I think he was also called Seton, but basically, which, and I think that might even be connected to Saturn, because like this idea of like of harvesting the grain, because you have the agricultural element and the scythe for harvesting wheat. But let's see. So Miriam most directly translates as Lady of the Sea. A direct an exact match to the title used. Let's see. Used used maybe centuries earlier to refer to Asherah, notably preserved in the Baal cycle. Okay. So that's really interesting how it parallels exactly. So let's see. So, and she's also mother of the gods. So, Elohim, there's really not like anything that's a good parallel. I mean, there's definitely an argument that could be made, but it's more typological than literary, and I don't really feel comfortable making an argument based off of just like, oh, these are two very similar things, you know?
Yeah, no, that especially not in any sort of paper.
Let's see. So, Mr. Blazing Up said, Allah or Alagula was a Mesopotamian god associated with the underworld. He functioned as the Sukal, attendant deity of Ningish Zida, and most likely was a dying god similar to Dumuzi and Damu. Wait, Dumuzi or Damuzi? It's the same, but yeah, because so the Dum in it I think just means sun. So Damu means sun. I might be wrong. It's been a while since I've straight up on that. The goddess Alatum was the Akkadian feminine counterpart of, I guess you're meaning Alat. Was the counterpart of Al. I don't know what you're trying to say. Was the Hurrian goddess of the underworld? Oh, you're just saying feminine counterpart of who though? Do you mean counterpart as like the feminine counter to Allah. I'm really lost. But was the Hurrian goddess of the underworld. She was associated with the determination
Or
of
the counterpart of Ningursag.
Yeah.
Oh, counterpart of Allah. Yeah.
She was closely linked with Ashara. Also, so what's interesting is the goddess of fate in ancient Canaan was actually called Ashima. And there's probably a connection to the root Shem, which it means name, but it also means renown, or contextually could mean fate, like fortune.
Ashra, the lady of the sea and mother of the gods, El's consort, accompanied him to visit with Prince Sea, Judge River.
So, let's see. So this is interesting. I'm going to write this as well. So, when El goes to visit Yam Nahar, Asherah is by his side, reminiscent of the inseparability of God and his Okay, let's see. Also, I'm going to... Another interesting thing is that, so... Rucha de Kudsha... wait. What was the name? Kudsha. Is a near cognate to Kudshu, an epithet for Asherah, notably in Egypt. Are you aware? You know what I'm talking about?
Not exactly. I know that Asherah was worshipped by the 18th dynasty in Egypt, and that was a flip for Egypt.
Oh, Philip A. Demick said, Dagon has a half-fish body. Asherah is Lady of the Sea. Interesting connection. Is that actually the case? Because I think that might be a later interpretation, the way people depicted Dagon, due to the fact that Dag means fish and Dagon means grain. So, I mean, it's more likely that he was associated grain. There's definitely a potential for a connection, but it's very spurious.
Yeah, because in a lot of cases, it's like we don't have a genealogy for Dagon. He's almost like the start of his pantheon, author of his own pantheon. So,
let's see. So, but have you ever heard of Kudshu?
How's that spelled?
Let's see. Does it have it rendered here?
Well, why don't we just go with no then, and explain?
Basically, Ketesh, but usually it would be Qudshu.
No, not familiar.
Let's see. Kudshu, goddess of Canaan. Oh, you're glitching out.
Oh, it popped up as Kadesh in your search.
Yeah. So, interesting. So, they don't have it here, but yeah, some scholars think that could have been an epithet of Asherah. So, let's see. I need to change that though. Let's see. So I put. Let's see. A possible epithet for Asherah, notably in Egypt. Let's see here.
They told him that he would be king of the gods, and sea rejoiced in his ascension. Anat,
Even when Dagon does not have fish legs, he is depicted wearing a fish cape. Interesting.
Not to fight on behalf of her brother, whose eyes were also set on the throne. El and Asherah, in preparation for Sea's rise to kingship, sent messengers to Kothar Wahassus and commanded he build Sea a palace from which he could reign. Sea demanded that his enemy Baal be handed over to him. Give up, gods, the one you obey, O multitude. Give up Baal that I may humble him, the son of Dagon, that I may inherit his gold. El and his assembly conceded to Sea and gave him
So there's also another interesting thing. So notice how what is it? Dang it, I forget the exact parallel, but basically there's certain context where like the angel of death is actually is like a child, is like one of the like angels, but is like one of the children of God, but like one of his favorites. And it's interesting because in Canaan, Mot was called El's darling. Death was called El's darling.
Interesting.
And like what was one of his children. It wasn't like he had a crush on Death.
Kothar Wahassus was not in agreement to Baal's surrender and offered to help him defeat his enemy. Now your enemy Baal, no, you will kill your enemy. Now you will annihilate your foe. You will take your eternal kingship, your dominion forever and ever. Kothar Wahassus constructed two.
So also one thing to note, there's so much I could mention on this. Like for instance, the parallels between this and the, I forget where, but it's a direct parallel with Yahweh somewhere. But I'm focusing mainly on Asherah and the divine feminine here, so I'm limiting myself.
Mighty weapons with which to deliver wrath upon Sea. He called them Driver and Chaser. As for you, your name is Driver. Driver, drive Sea from his throne, river from the seat of his dominion. Swoop from Baal's hands like a vulture from his fingers. Strike Prince Sea on the shoulder, judge River between the arms. Prince Baal hurled Driver into Sea's shoulder, but Sea did not waver. As for you, your name is Chaser. Chaser, chase Sea from his throne, river from the seat of his dominion. Swoop from Baal's hands like a vulture from his fingers. Strike Prince Sea on the skull, judge River between the eyes. Sea will stumble, he will fall to the ground. Prince Baal flung Chaser to Sea's forehead, between his eyes, and the mighty Sea quaked and was defeated.
Tonight, boxing's brightest stars shine on one knockout night. The Mexican monster, undefeated superstar David Benavidez. What more do you want? Defends his title against undefeated Demetrius Andrade.
Baal's divine advocate celebrated his victory, and the goddess Astarte extolled. Hail, Baal the Conqueror! Hail, rider on the clouds! Prince Sea is our captive. Judge River is our captive.
Wait, is this a knot that says this? So it's interesting because let's see. You might know this better than me. You probably would. Is there ever a point where Mary or Magdalene or like any of the women where they're, because I know there's this whole like tradition with like the palm leaves or whatever, but I think that's like more to do with Easter or something. But like, isn't there this whole thing where they're like hailing Jesus or something and they're like praising him? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, you have like Mary Magdalene with the the wiping of the feet and the anointing on at the before the Last Supper sort of thing.
Let's see.
You have them a lot, the whole trailing behind them in the whole crucifixion event.
Let's see.
Mary and Martha were definitely, his supporters.
Let's see.
You know, I don't know if the women are specifically mentioned. You're saying the palm leaves. That's the at the entrance into Jerusalem when he's riding on the ass.
So this is what I'm thinking of. So it might not be a direct parallel here, but I think you have it later. So look at this. Mark chapter 16. And entering into the sepulchre, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, clothed in a long white garment, and they were frightened. And he said unto them, Be not afraid. Ye seek Jesus of Nazareth, which was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. Behold the place where they laid him. But go on your way, tell his disciples and Peter that he goeth before you into Galilee. There shall you see him, as he said to you. And they went out. Wait, where is it? I must have missed it. Okay, here. And the angel answered and said unto the women, Fear not ye, for I know that you seek Jesus, which was crucified. He's not here, and he's risen. He said, Come see the place. Wait, am I just... I'm just reading the same thing again. What am I... Let's see. No, I must be thinking of something else. It might come to me later if this is the right thing.
Hail, Baal the Conqueror. Hail, rider on the clouds. Prince Sea is our captive. Judge River is our captive. The feasting that commenced was considerable, full of revelry, food, and drink. And Baal raised a goblet in both his hands, a large beaker, manifestly great, a jar to astound a mortal, a holy cup women should not see, a goblet Asherah must not set her eye on. Anat, Baal's sister, forever...
Why is it saying that the women can't see it?
I don't know.
I mean, obviously, we know some people who would interpret this to be something phallic, but I don't understand why. Or why women shouldn't see it.
Both his hands, a large beaker, manifestly great, a jar to astound a mortal, a holy cup women should not see, a goblet Asherah must not set her eye on. Anat, Baal's sister, forever agitated with violence and fury, waged war upon humans. Her bloodlust was insatiable. And behold, Anat battled in the valley. She fought between the two cities. She killed people of the coast. She annihilated men of the east. Heads rolled under her like balls. Hands around.
Honestly, I might look at the parallels between Anat and what was it? What was her name? Salome?
That was the dancer that got
Yeah.
John beheaded. And the name of several of Herod's daughters / wives / cousins. It's tough to keep track of some of those names with women sometimes in the Middle East. Tag.
Let's see.
Around her like locusts, warrior hands like swarms of grasshoppers. She fashioned heads to her back. She tied hands to her belt. She harvested knee-deep in soldiers' blood, up to her thighs in warriors' gore. With a staff she drove her enemies, with the string of her bow her opponents. In the midst of her warring, Baal sent his messengers, Gapna and Ugar, to Anat and besieged her. For I have a word to tell you, a message to recount to you, the word of the tree and the whisper of the stone.
So that's it. For I have a message to tell you, a story to recount, or what was it?
To tell you, a message to recount.
A word to tell you, a message to recount. That's the same wording that's used when Ehud goes up and tricks and kills King Eglon of Moab. But what's interesting here, so Gapna is from Gafen or from Gapen. Basically, it means the vine or wine, like grapevine. And then Ugar, I forget what Ugar is from, but that's the root of Ugarit, was probably the god of Ugarit, or at least maybe not like the god, but like was like Ugarit deified, if that makes any sense.
The the word of the tree and the whisper of the stone, the murmur of the heavens to the earth, of the seas to the stars. I understand the lightning that heavens do not know, the word that people do not know, and the earth's masses cannot understand. Come, and I will reveal it in the midst.
Wait a second. This almost sounds like Thunder Perfect Mind. At least parts of it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the Nag Hammadi text.
No, but I mean, do you know the part that let's see. Okay, so, what is it? It's reading right now. So, for I have a word to talk. Let's see, the word of the tree. So it's basically talking about all these very like cryptic things. Let's see. So, okay, wait here. Here's what I'm thinking of. I am the sinless, and the root of sin derives from me. Okay, wait here. Where is it? Wait a second. Holy crap. I prepared the bread and my mind within. I am the knowledge of my name. Like this direct connection between bread and knowledge. Oh, wait, it was bread of knowledge? That might have been something else. Never mind. That might have been... No, I think it was that reminded me of that one thing that ended up being complete BS. But this isn't BS. I'm just trying to see. Okay, let's see. The things that... Okay. Here. So it's not necessarily... So... it's interesting because this is Sophia talking, but she's saying she is all these things. So let's just ignore the I am sinless, I am lustin. But let's see, where is this? The speech which cannot be grasped, great multitude of words. Let's see. Honestly, it might just be the type of language more than anything. I don't think it's any direct parallels. It would be cool if it was.
Yeah, and you can't just go by style of writing. That was common to write in that sort of scriptural style.
Dang. I love this one though. I am the one whom they call life, and you have called death. I am the one whom they call law, and you called lawlessness. Yeah, I can't find any direct parallels here, but too bad.
My mountain, divine Zaphon, in the sanctuary, in the mountain of my inheritance, in the pleasant place, in the hill of my victory.
Dang it, there's another parallel, but I can't bring it up because it's too far afield.
Anat heeded the words of his messengers and came to Baal's holy mountain Zaphon. When his sister arrived, Baal lamented that he did not have a palace to dwell in, a true and necessary mark of kingship. Anat swore to speak to El on his behalf, and that El would listen to her or she would become violent and force him to agree. Then she headed to El at the source of the two rivers, in the midst of the channels of the two deeps. She arrived at El's encampment, the tent of the king, the father of time. As she approached, El said, I know you, daughter, how furious you are, that among the goddesses there is no restraining you. What do you want, maiden Anat? Your decree is wise, El, your wisdom eternal. A lucky life is your decree. But our king is Baal, the conqueror, our judge, higher than all. All of us must bear his chalice. All of us must bear his cup. In lament he declares to the bull El, his father, to El the king, who brought him into being. He declares to Asherah and his sons, to the goddess and her pride of lions. But Baal has no house like the other gods, no court like Asherah's sons. El's home is
Mute.
So here's another parallel. So you have what is this? Asherah and her sons, to the goddess and her pride of lions. So Asherah and her sons, the goddess and her pride of lions. let's see. Asherah and her sons, the goddess and her pride of lions, parallels with both with both prophetic language around Rebecca and her sons, as well as in Ezekiel 19, in addition to further Asherah allusions. Let's see. So, I mean, without going directly into it, here, check this out. So this is Ezekiel 19. So look at this. I mean, I've gone over this before, but Vatasa kina el nesie Yisrael. You are to lift up a dirge, or like a, was it like a funeral hymn, or yeah, a dirge is the best word, over the princes of Israel, and you are to say, what a lioness was your mother between the lions. She prowled in the midst of the lion cubs. She raised her, or in the midst of the lion whelps, she raised her cubs. And she raised up. Basically, you have this language of her and her sons. Her sons are her cubs, implying that she's a lioness. Then here you have your mother was like a vine. Here you have that what's the word, agricultural imagery. She's planted beside the Mayim Rabim, the great waters. This is like the waters of creation, the primordial waters. She had a mighty rod, basically saying she is, almost saying she is a rod or a staff, just like the Asherah was a staff. And you have this this language of exile surrounding the very end of it, and it just kind of goes on. There's very little, and right before this, like there's it basically, it has this like, oh, don't mess with me language, but there's really nothing about who this mother of the princes of Israel is. So it really makes me think that it's coming from this tradition. It's almost undeniable.
Well, a lot of the Ugaritic tradition got incorporated later. I mean, the character of Daniel is cited in the Bible a few times, as opposed to Daniel, who's a very close parallel again.
So do you think that these are like the same tradition, but getting like almost like separated at two different points, and then eventually they're like being recombined back together?
Yeah, like it's like gets updated and kind of like smushed together again. One of the analogies that I use to think of it, and again, this is my own, is sort of like comic book eras, like Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, Modern Age, where you have Superman and all of those, but he's slightly different and updated. But he ends up being one Superman out of all of them, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, interesting.
Is his son's shelter, Lady Asherah of the sea's home, the home of Pidre, made of light, the shelter of Tale, made of rain, the home of Arse, made of the wide world, the home of the beautiful brides. To further his cause, Baal and Anat went to beseech Asherah, El's consort, to gain her support. Baal and Anat found her doing her divine chores, washing her clothes in the sea and river, cooking and sewing. They came bearing many wonderful gifts, but although Asherah delighted in them, she replied, "Why do you give gifts to Lady Asherah of the sea, presents to the Mother of Gods? Have you given gifts, Lady Asherah?" But although Baal and Anat found her doing her divine chores, washing her clothes in the sea and river, cooking and sewing. They came bearing many wonderful gifts.
So I'm not too up to date with this, but let's see. Women in the New Testament washing clothes. Wait, what is this? Oh, okay, this is interesting. Blessed are those, or Ashrei, Ashrei, what would it be? I mean, obviously this is Greek originally, but actually if I see that, so Revelation 22:14, Revelation 22:14. Wait, what? Hold on. Blessed are those who wash their robes. How is this getting translated elsewhere as blessed are those that do his commandments? This is so strange. Dude, look at this. This is bizarre. Like, you literally have two different translations. One says that do his commandments, those have washed their robes. Oh, I was afraid I was muted. But yeah, what do you think of this? This is wild.
I don't even know quite what to think of it. No, it's definitely...
Okay, so let's see. Blessed are those... Hoy. So, Ashrei Hem... It would be Ashrei Hem... I forget what. Would it be Ravats? No. Basically, but blessed are those who wash their robes, that they will be right of the... What? Yeah, I'm definitely going to just kind of note this down. So let's see. Let's see. Baal and Anat go to Asherah, and she is washing her. She is washing clothes. Parallels that are parallels the connection to Tree of Life in Revelation 22:14. Let's see. So, where were we here? Oh, right. Let's see. New Testament women sewing. Exodus 35:25. She's washing. Let's see. She is sewing, paralleling. Paralleling Exodus. What is it? I forgot. 35:25. 35:25. Let's see. And then she's cooking as well. Let's see, is there anything in the New Testament about that? Oh, how did I not think of this? Let's see. Marvadim Astala Sheshvar. Wait, no. Wait. I'm trying to think this would be. Sadin Astavatim Hor. Wait, so Sadin, it would be before. So, dang it. I'm too tired to back translate this. So let's see, is Proverbs 31. pull it up on Safaria. Here. Okay, here. So let's see. So it's here. Marvadim Astala Sheshvargaman Lavusha. I was right. Why did I think that I was interesting? But yeah, so she makes covers for herself. Her clothing is linen purple. Let's see. I'll just focus on this. So there's 3122. 3122. And Proverbs 3122. Wait, is there any mention of food? Let's see. Yeah. She where is this? She rises while it is still night and supplies provisions for her household, the daily fare of her maids. So this would be 14 14 to 15. Cooking / bringing food. Proverbs 31, 14 to 15, I think it was. Yeah, 14 to 15. Let's see. 13. Let's see. 31:13 is more sewing. 31:13. Proverbs 31:13, comma 22, comma 31:22. Let's see. Oh, yeah, here's another one. 19. Or I might have already marked that one down. Holy crap, there is so many sewing parallels. I did not notice. So Proverbs 31:13, 31:19, comma. This is what. Do you have any thoughts on this so far?
The first thought I have is that if you're doing a paper on the sewing parallels here, you have the paper's going to almost write itself.
Let's see. So 21, 22, 23. Noda Besharim Bala Beshiv Tel Imzi. Wait, let's see. So Noda Besharim Bala. Her husband is known in the gates when he's. The implication here is because of his clothing, but it's not. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Wait. Was there? Actually, let's see. Meh. Honestly, I think that's fine. Too much in it seems like I'm really trying to push it. Let's see. Where are we here? Share here. Here.
Why do you give gifts to Lady Asherah of the sea, presents to the Mother of Gods? Have you given gifts to the bull, El the compassionate, or presents to the Creator of creatures? Won over by their petition, Asherah then journeyed to El on account of Baal and his palace.
So this is interesting. Even in a Canaanite context, there are clear undertones of the subservience of Asherah to El, foreshadowing the understanding of the Holy Spirit being God's Holy Spirit rather than a separate entity. Like, you could almost make an argument that there was already elements of, like, because if you already had these traditions that viewed goddesses as being, you know, like independent of gods, and then now you have this goddess where she's basically saying, you know, when she's being given gifts, that she's saying, no, give them to, have you offered them to him first? Like, on one hand, it almost seems like it's establishing this hierarchy, but at the same time, she goes on their behalf to speak to him. So it almost seems like there's like this, not criticism, but like it's saying, like, you know, don't get this idea that they're equal, but at the same time, it's like, do go to Asherah because she's how you get to El.
I guess my way of looking at it is this is one of those male-female city consort combos where they're, in a very real sense, a conjoined unit. One doesn't exist without the other. And in that sense, it's a, you know, is your right hand subservient to your left hand, you know, right brain, left brain kind of thing. And I don't see, you know, the huge problem with one of them takes control at some point, some take control at the other, because that's kind of see there. The other aspect of it is usually the Holy Spirit is seen as the immanent aspect, and that's going to inherently place it into like the soil, into more of a passive sort of sense, and make it inherently more of a feminine sort of aspect. Tag on those.
Interesting. Yeah, I think there's something to that.
El rejoiced at seeing Asherah coming to him and said, "Eat, please drink."
It's funny because I can't see that and not think that it's supposed to be for, you know, washing your hands, like al netilat yadayim, like where you know, like Jewish washing of hands, and not. I mean, like, obviously, I'd like to think that Jews wash their hands a lot, but like I'm talking about like ritual washing, not just, you know, with soap.
Personally, I'd like to think everybody washed their hands a lot, but I'm not silly enough to think that's true. Tag.
Yeah, I've learned not to assume that. That's also one of the reasons why I don't like shaking people's hands. You never know where they've been. Or rather, when the last time they have been underwater with soap.
Exactly. You have a good idea where they've been. You just don't want to have any contact with that.
Yeah.
Eat some food from the table. Drink some wine from the goblet. Blood of the vine from the golden cup. Or does El...
Holy crap! So there's this one reference that I brought up before, where it's you're like, what is this? What is it? It was the Ezekiel reference. Do I have it still up? Sweet, I do. So it's actually, so this idea that wine is the blood of the vine, because that's what it said, right? Here it's imecha kagefen bidamecha. Your mother was like the vine in your blood or in your image. What's interesting is the vine in your blood as opposed to the blood in your vine. You see what I'm saying? It's like the blood in the vine is wine, but the vine in the blood is saying that this is just so interesting.
My thought is using the vine in the blood is having a binding aspect to it, sort of where vines can be, you know, the unifying binding aspect. That's just a thought.
Yeah, but just blood of the vine, it's so commonly used, I'm not going to write anything about it. But it's definitely, if there's more mention, or where they equate Asherah with the blood of the vine, or the vine itself, that's something to notice.
Does the love of the bull arouse you?
I'm sorry, but like, this has got to be some of the worst pickup lines ever.
Drink some wine from the goblet, blood of the vine from the golden cup. Or does El the king's passion excite you? Does the love of the bull arouse you? But Asherah had not come for pleasure. She came to petition that a palace be made for Baal, their king. El, irritated with his consort for her boldness, replied, So am I a servant who handles a tool, or a slave girl of Asherah who molds bricks? Despite his annoyance, he agreed to the request. Asherah exclaimed, Now Baal will provide his enriching rain, provide a rich watering and a downpour, and he will sound his voice in the clouds, flash lightning to the earth. Let him complete his house of cedar. Let him complete his house of bricks. Let it be announced to Baal the conqueror, Call a caravan to your house, supplies into your palace. The mountains will bring you much silver, the hills fine gold in abundance. The best ore will be brought to you, and build a house of silver and gold, a house of the purest lapis lazuli. Upon El's approval, Baal sent word to Kothar Wahassus to begin construction. Kothar Wahassus happily began the work, but wished to provide Baal with a window, and said, Listen, Baal the Conqueror, pay attention, rider
So
on the...
I'm, again, not going to include it, but it's almost like Kothar Wahassus is like the mythological version of Hiram Abiff, or, of King Hiram.
Yeah, Hiram Abiff, Hephaestus. Yeah, he's basically the smith god, the craftsman god.
Clouds. I should put an opening in the house, a window in the palace. Baal refused, and he did not want any opening in his new...
That's how my teenage daughters are going to sneak out to go to parties at night. That's why I don't want any windows in any of my house. I want my house to be a prison. And that's why Baal is an abusive father.
Palace.
There's nothing wrong with windows if you just put bars over them.
It's like, it's not abusive if you at least let them see the sun.
But said that Baal will remember his words later and change his mind. Kothar Wahassus worked for 6 days, and on the 7th day he finished, and the smelting fire was extinguished. Baal provided a magnificent feast for the gods and invited them all to his new palace.
So that's also interesting, the creation in 7 days. I mean, I'm just going to include that because why not? Let's see. Baal cycle has the creation of Baal's temple in 7 days, just like the 7 days of creation.
Yeah, now's the time to jot down any reference that you possibly see, and you can always just cut it out later.
Yeah.
After the celebration, Baal went out and conquered many cities and villages. When he returned, he changed his mind and told Kothar Wahassus, I will put it in, Kothar, son of sea, Kothar, son of the confluence.
Wait, what? So...
Kothar, son of sea, son of Asherah?
No, this is a reference to son of Yah, most likely.
Yeah, makes sense.
Let a window be opened in the house, an opening in the palace. So let a break be opened in the clouds, as Kothar Wahassus said. Baal exalted himself on his throne, saying, No other king or non-king shall set his power over the earth. I will send a messenger to El's son Death, an envoy to El's darling, the hero, that he may call to Death with his throat, instruct the darling with his innards. For I alone, ruler of the gods, I alone fatten gods and men, I alone satisfy earth's masses. Baal wished to vaunt his kingship over his enemy Death. He sent his messengers to the underworld, which was called the swamp, the pit, and filth. They boasted of Baal's new palace.
How powerful is Cox fiber?
Powerful enough for a virtual flight simulation right from your home. Introducing Cox Fiber.
Death replied, "When you killed Latan, the fleeing serpent, finished off the twisting serpent, the seven-headed monster, the heavens withered and weakened, like the folds of your robe. Now you must descend into the throat of El's son, Death, into the watery depths of El's darling, the hero." When Baal's messengers returned and told him of Death's demand, Baal became afraid and surrendered to Death, saying, "Hail, El's son Death, I am your servant, yours forever." And Death said, "As for you, take
Wait
your
a
cloud,
second.
your wind, your
Holy
bolts, your ring."
shit.
Said, "Hail, El's
I
son
mean, you
Death,
caught
I
the
am your
battle with
servant."
Typhon, reference earlier.
So, no, but listen to this. Hail El's sons. So, notice this. And, let's see. Let's see. Where is this from? And Jesus was afraid. Where is that from?
I remember the apostles being afraid a lot.
No, but it was, let's see. I wish I could find something that wasn't theological. Okay, let's see. Where's this from, though? Okay, this is in the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus started to pray, we can clearly see he was sorrowful and troubled. The Greek word translated as troubled could be translated as fear or lack of courage. Jesus says to his disciples that he was very sorrowful, even to death. Let's see. So this is, let's see. Here, I'm just going to copy this and I'll put it in my own words later. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, I'll just here copy. Parallels Baal's fear of Mot, but eventual coalescence to eventual acceptance of his fate. And then also, wait, let's see. Why have you forsaken me? Why have you forsaken me? Is there any reference of your servant? Let's see. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything here. I could have sworn there was something. No, guess not. I don't know what I was thinking of.
Watery depths of El's darling, the hero. When Baal's messengers returned and told him of Death's demand, Baal became afraid and surrendered to Death, saying, "Hail, El's son Death, I am your servant, yours forever." And Death said, "As for you, take your clouds, your wind, your bolts, your rain. Take with you your 7 lads, your 8 noble attendants. Take with you Pidre, made of light. Take with you Tale, made of rain. Then head to Mount Kenkenia, raise the mountain with your hands, the hill on top of your palms. Then go down to the isolation ward of the underworld. You will be counted among those who go down into the earth, and the gods will know that you have died.
Interesting. Mount Kankania? I've never heard of that before. Have you?
No. My bet is it's probably another name for another mountain we have heard of. Or not.
Let's see. Mount Kankania. Yeah, it's never really said. I wonder, though. A mountain at the entrance to the underworld. Dang it. It's like, now I really want to know. Wouldn't it be wild if it turned out to be the Canaanite name, or like the Ugarit? No, because this would have been from Ugarit, so I don't know, but I was gonna say, wouldn't it be wild if that was like the Ugaritic name for Hermon?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if it was something like that, or
Let's see if I can find anything here. Kankania.
It's clearly some sort of holy mountain.
I wonder if it might be like the... Yeah, I have no clue. Let's see. Here. Wait, where was it? Here. Oh, here.
Baal conceded, and on his way to the underworld, he stopped in a field and coupled with a heifer many times.
Interesting. Okay, this is really interesting. So, before dying and going down to the underworld, Baal mates with a heifer, potentially foreshadowing his rebirth in a parallel with the necessity for in Israelite tradition for the red heifer, and whose return will signal the redemption of Israel and the coming of the Messiah. Tell me that's not a parallel.
Oh, definitely. I was going to say I went a slightly different direction. Yours is better for your paper, but I was sitting there and immediately hearing echoes of Zeus and Europa, Io, that sort of thing.
Wait, 3D counter apologetics. Wait, is this Sammy? Did you change your channel name? I don't know. Like, I'm getting that vibe. I have no clue. Literally no idea. I'm totally guessing, but I'm looking it up because, let's see, 3D counter apologetics. Apologetics. Yeah, I mean, I don't actually know who this is. I mean, if you just watch my videos and you never really, say anything, let me know, because otherwise I'm like, who is this? Anyway, but yeah, you're saying about Io and what was it, Europa?
Yeah, the whole that Zeus mating with cows. You know, Zeus was always into that sort of thing, so it immediately brought up that one again with the parallels between Baal and Zeus.
Definitely an interesting connection.
She became
Oh wow,
pregnant
you're totally
and bore
right.
a son. Afterward, death prevailed, and Baal's life was lost. El the kind, the compassionate, mourned the loss of Baal, and wept in anguish. He poured dirt on his head in mourning, dust on his skull in lamentation. He covered his loins with a sackcloth. He cut his skin with a stone, made incisions with a razor. He cut his cheeks and chin, raked the length of his arms. He plowed his chest like a garden. He raked his back like a valley. He raised his voice and declared, Baal is dead. What will happen to the peoples? Dagon's son, what will happen to the masses? I will go down into the earth after Baal. A knot while hunting the earth came across Baal's remains, and she and son carried his body back to Mount Zaphon for burial.
So then,
there they lamented his death.
Because wasn't it the women who buried Jesus who put him in the?
Yeah, it's usually the women who deal with the body afterwards, like with King Arthur and all.
Let's see, prepares him for burial. Similar.
So my guess is that could be just a continuation of the Canaanite/Jewish tradition.
Body by his female followers, and whom later are the first to witness his rising from, or witness his absence from absent. Dang it. From the tomb. Right.
They sacrificed hundreds of animals in oblation for him. El called for one of Asherah's sons to take Baal's place and to become king. Asherah suggested Yadi Yahan, but El claimed he was too weak. So El appointed Athtar, the awesome, who then
rings a bell, but I'm going to be honest, I have it's easy for me to forget. Let's see. Been absent for a while, missed a lot of your streams and told us I'm loving your vids since I'm studying and so all this is brilliant. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm just trying to catch up on a horribly procrastinated final project. And so I'm basically just fishing for ideas because I have a basic premise. I want to touch on basically the evolution of the role of the goddess to divine feminine within monotheistic traditions, but specifically Canaanite tradition to. Honestly, I'm probably not going to touch on First Temple Israelite period because it's kind of spurious, and there honestly might not actually be a First Temple period. It might just be the Canaanite period. But basically, with the Second Temple period, you definitely have this clear evolution of ideas into the Holy Spirit, and then later with Christology and Mariolatry, you also have this development of the Mary as the Queen of Heaven, and as Theotokos as Mother of God, or the God Bearer. So you have a lot of stuff that develops from there, and that's kind of what I want to touch on. Let's see, between Gemini and Taurus is the silver gate of man. Orion is standing in the center, looking a lot like Baal. I'm not going to lie, Mr. Blazing Up. I don't understand half of what you say. I don't judge you. I just don't understand it. And I hope you don't judge me for not understanding it. Let's see.
Descended to Mount Zaphon. Yet his feet could not reach the floor upon sitting on the throne, and he abdicated as king of the gods and became king of the earth.
Wait, who is this?
Floor upon sitting the awesome, who then assumed he was too weak. So
Wait, Yadi Yahan?
Suggested Yadi Yahan, but El claimed
Yadi Yahan. I don't know.
Yeah, with a name like that, who would have thought he'd be too weak?
Let's see. Yadi Yahan. Yadi Yahan. Yadi Yahan. It's like that one song. let's see, Yadi Yahan. What? Let's see, Yadi Yahan, Canaan. Yadi. Let's see, Yadi. Oh, Yahan. What would Yahan be? Okay, this is cool. Whoa, that's a lot of pages. Okay, let's see. Find on page Yadi. Maybe Yahan. No. Let's see. Wait, what does it say? He knows, he understands. Other name. Let's see. Vilhan. He knows, he understands. Let's see. He knows. Okay, found it. So, let's see.
He's almost sounding like an Ugaritic god of knowledge, sort of a parallel to like Nabu or Thoth.
Yeah. So Alianu once Aliyubal Atirat Asherah is a perfect verb, formerly stated from the fuller name Atirat Yami, she who treads upon the sea. Other examples of are Yagaris, he drives out, and I Yamari, ho he routes. Magical names given to the divine clubs fashioned for Baal's combat, and the appellation Rakib or Rakub, shortened from Rakub Arapati or Rakib Arapati. Another divine name is Yad Yalhan or Yadi Yilhan, in which imperfect verbal elements are used. He knows, he understands. Interesting. From Mari comes. Wait, does it just. Whoa. This is interesting. From Mari comes the interesting name of a patriarchal deity of the Amorites, Yakrub-Il, the god or El blesses. Fortunately, there can be no doubt that Yakrub-Il is a divine name in view of its context in Mari text and from the use of the Dingir sign as determinative. The name is of special interest in view of the suggestion of David Noel Friedman on wholly different grounds that the curious combination Yahweh Elohim is in the primordial stories of Genesis go back to an earlier sentence name of the God of Israel, namely Yahweh El, in which the element Yahweh still preserved verbal force. Two other Amorite divine names are worthy of attention. One appears as Yapu, or in Amorite dialectical form Epu. The other is Yashu. Or
interesting.
Or Esu. Both names have transparent etymologies and forms. Yapu from I don't know, to be radiant in theophany, and Yatu from Yitz, to be victory. This must be this is like Mari, so I don't know. This like Mari and Ebla. This is out of my wheelhouse. I really can't. There's certain things that connect, but let's see. To be victor, both may have analyzed as perfect statives of the G stem, comparable with the Theophorus elements Saduk and Rakub, or with the Katil, a stative frozen as a divine name Rapi, which means, I think, healer. So this is really interesting. So you have Yakrub-Il and you have Yashu. So it's almost like you have Yaakov and you have Viesa.
Yeah, no, definitely I'm seeing those parallels there. And that whole area of Mari and Yamad, and that whole area is like it's like you got the Phoenicians on the coast, with Ugarit being its mix of just about everything, and then you have the inner ones that are almost like a buffer in between the Assyrian Empire, Akkad, Sumer, and all of those further down in the Tigris and Euphrates tag.
Definitely, yeah. Let's see, what is 3D said, this is why Christianity really feels like a call back to old Israelite theology sometimes. Not Christianity, I think what originally started, I mean, because it's not really fair to call it Christianity, especially because the term didn't exist yet. In the same way, it's not really fair to call, like you have Jewish tradition, but Judaism doesn't really exist until the Roman period. So it's one of those things where it's like, depending on how you define it, changes it. But isn't the place of Asherah yield to a second power later on? I don't know what you mean. Oh, oof. That was weird. Can you expand on what you mean?
He was too weak. So El appointed Athtar the Awesome, who
So
then ascended
it is
to Mount
interesting.
Zion. Yet his feet could not reach the floor upon sitting on the throne, and he abdicated as king of the gods and became king of the earth.
So I almost feel like there's definitely some connections here with the element, because Athar is the male form of Ashtar, and this is basically would this be the, I think Athar might have been he was Venus. So notice this. So Athar is also Lucifer, and notice how his feet can't touch the ground. So this idea that he tried to ascend to heavens, but it's almost like he wasn't worthy, and so he was, he had to take the earth. But in this case, it's like, oh, he just, he abdicated the throne. But in the Hebrew tradition, he's struck down. He's just like a fly, like thwack, just thwack down to the ground by God. So it's interesting how you have these parallels. Oh, I'm going to make note of that. Let's see. Athtar the Awesome. Also, what a name. Abdicates the throne of Baal when he isn't worthy, in a contrast to Lucifer / Hillel ben Shachar being smacked down in, I think it's Ezekiel. I'm not sure. I'm just putting unsure there. Let's see. So when El and Asherah renegotiated, I came to wonder if the renegotiation led to the vacancy in powers that would later be renegotiated. So I actually don't think that's the case so much as you have El and Asherah, and El becomes the Father, Asherah becomes the Holy Spirit. But the problem is, where do you get this idea of the Son from? So you have El, you have Asherah, and then you have Baal. So once you have the fusion of Baal and El, or El and Yahweh, into one God, the Son and the Father become the same. That's probably also the precursors of some of these ideas where, the Father is the Son and the Son is the Father, or where they're both God, but they're also somewhat distinct. That might be where it's from. And so in Judaism, the name, Yah and El, they get understood as being the same God, just different names. Christianity, it gets understood as being different personages, basically, except the thing is, they still consider El and Yah to be the same God. Although I have seen certain Christians who they'll actually say that Jesus is basically just Yod He Vav He. And so it almost seems like they're kind of noting, or they're almost just on this cusp of realizing that, given I don't think Jesus is Yahweh, but they're almost on the cusp of realizing that Yahweh and El are two separate gods. And again, I don't think that means that they're in conflict, but with the story of Baal and El, it's he's his dad. Let's see. If this is the case, could a case be made older Israelite theologies were still about during the Roman period? Maybe, but they were probably the things that were established later as heresies, or at least in Talmud, they're referred to as Amhar. It's the people of the land, literally pagans. I see that now. The triune renegotiation, always a yeah. And so within Jewish theology, because the Messiah really isn't like, I mean, it's like it plays a role, but it's like more so representative. The role of the son gets kind of just superimposed onto Israel. So like referring to Israel as Jacob, but also Israel as the as the personified people. And so with this, you have this idea that, and then you also get the Holy Spirit personified or like embodied within the Torah. And so there is this one tradition that it's also in Zohar, but it's that, and some people can take this the wrong way where it's like, oh, Jewish people think they're God. This is not what it is at all. But there's this tradition that Hashem, God, the Torah, the Torah or like the Bible, and the Jewish people or Israel, more directly Israel, are all one. It's like it's definitely pulling on some of this like Trinitarian language, but it's not at all saying that we are God. It's not saying. I mean, there definitely are traditions that you could look at it that way, but it's not in a way that like, oh, Jews are exclusively like it's not. It's humans in general, but actually you could exclude that to everything. That God is in everything. So basically, by saying that you're God, you're saying everything is God, and so you're saying that nothing is God. Like everything is God, nothing is God. The point is that some people could take this the wrong way, but it's much more like this idea of like three interwoven rings where like you can't separate. Like basically, you take out Torah, and which is an interesting thing. The implication that you need Jews or that you need Torah in order for the Jewish God to exist, or not to exist, but to like be present. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I haven't studied enough about this, but there's definitely elements that. Usal said the way the Jehovah's Witnesses deal with it is by turning Jesus into Michael. I mean, there actually is a good argument for that. That the imagery around Michael as like the angel of Israel actually could have been adopted by the early Christian movement, but it's speculative. Let's see. Yeah, I read the portion of Zohar in my studies always made me think pantheism, atheism, monotheism. I'd say panentheism, that God is within reality and without reality, but that reality can't be without God because it's within God. And likewise, we can't be without God because we exist within reality. So it's almost like this idea that it applies both to the atheist and to the theist, and to the lowest grain of sand to the highest form of intelligence.
Anat's anger towards death for her brother could not be quenched, and she raged towards death and yelled, "Come, death, give me my brother." In her vengeful anger, Anat conquered death. Like the heart of a cow for her calf, like the heart of a ewe for her lamb, so was Anat's heart for Baal. She seized El's son Death. With a sword she split him. With a sieve she smote him. With a fire she burned him.
So
with millstones
this is
she
really
consumed Baal.
interesting. So like the heart of a cow for her calf, and like the heart of an ewe for her lamb. You know why this is eerie?
Why?
One of the it's possible that the meaning of Leah is actually like referring to like cow-eyed.
She sees,
and that and we know that Rachel means ewe. So, and notice that Leah was married to Jacob first, and then Rachel. First the calf, then the lamb.
Ah, no, good pickup.
And it also echoes some of this idea of sacrificing the cows first and then moving on to the goats and the lambs.
Makes sense.
Let's see. Anat's love for Baal is compared to that of a cow, Leah, for her calf, and what was the second one? A doe for her ewe.
I thought lamb. Yeah, yeah.
No,
No,
heart
it's
of
not at the.
ewe for a lamb.
Yeah, ooh for a lamb.
And a ewe, Rachel, for her lamb. That's really eerie.
Seized El's son Death. With a sword she split him. With a sieve she winnowed him. With a fire she burned him. With millstones she ground him. In the fields she sowed him. Birds ate his flesh. Fowl consumed his parts. Flesh cried out to flesh.
Isn't that also? I think that's used in the Bible as well. Flesh cried out to flesh. Flesh cried.
Well, what jumped out to me was the Abel dying and the stones crying out for him.
Same. It seems like it's just a cultural way of speaking.
A prophecy came to El, and he dreamt that the heavens rained down oil, the wadi ran with honey. El's sadness began to lift, and he sent Anat to speak with Sun, and told her to look for Baal. In this they succeeded, and found Baal alive. He rose and battled against Asherah's sons.
Mute.
Oh, sorry. So notice this. So Anat's going. Let's see. Anat's going. Anat goes off with Shapash, the female form of the sun, to go to find Baal, mirroring the women who returned to Jesus's tomb to see his body, only to find him gone and an angel in its place. Obviously oversimplifying it, but I'm just trying to write down some ideas.
He decimated death, and in victory he returned to his throne on Mount Zaphon, and once again rain and fertility returned to the earth. For 6 years there was peace. In the 7th year, Death returned to Baal and said, Baal, because of you I experienced shame. Because of you I experienced splitting with a sword. Because of you I experienced burning with fire. Because of you I experienced grinding with millstones. Because of you I experienced winnowing with a sieve. Because of you I experienced scattering in the field.
It's like tough shit. That's what you made me go through.
Give me one of your brothers that I may eat, and my anger will turn away. If you do not give up one of your brothers, then I will consume humans. I will consume the multitudes of the earth.
Interesting. So do you think
But Baal
that
gave death
story has something to do with this idea that people sacrificed other people in order that the gods wouldn't take them all?
Makes sense. I can see that.
One of Death's brothers instead of his own, and Death became enraged. They butted each other like champions. Death was strong, Baal was strong. They gored each other like wild oxen. Death was strong,
Baal was strong.
They bit each other like serpents. Death was
strong.
strong,
Baal was strong.
They trampled each other like running animals. Death
Death
fell,
Baal fell.
Sun came and told Death not to fight against Baal, for he will anger his father El. How can you battle with Baal the conqueror? Will the bull El, your father, continue to listen to you? Surely he will undermine the foundations of your seat. Surely he will overturn your royal throne. Surely he will smash your scepter of judgment.
That sounds painful.
Death conceded and exclaimed, Let Baal be enthroned on his royal throne, on the resting place, the seat of his dominion. And so Baal the conqueror became Lord and King over the gods. The rider on the clouds gave the earth his rain and fertility to the land.
Oh no, does that mean it's the end of the world? Let's see. But yeah, so it's really interesting. There's definitely like so much there. And it's just, I don't know. I wish that more people were aware of it.
From
So,
root to tip,
here, I'm
oregano
gonna
is the
watch
hair.
this
Hello, my dear.
and finish up soon.
My name is Mariana, and welcome to my channel. So today I want to talk about something so important to me on my journey into the divine feminine, and something I just really want to share with you. So my journey into the divine feminine has looked a little bit different than most people's. I think most people kind of come at it through their lived experience or through, engaging with their femininity. But I found the divine feminine through my academic study. When I was at graduate school, I read some stuff and I was like, this changes everything. And so it wasn't through these typical goddesses like Aphrodite and Isis that I kind of came to the divine feminine. It was through the more mysterious, the more intangible versions of the divine feminine, the emanations of her that have come into being and then disappeared. And that just fascinated me. And so it was through Sophia that I really came to embrace the divine feminine as I do today. Full disclosure, Sophia is most absolutely my favorite goddess, and that's why I put together my next seminar, which I just want to briefly tell you about before we jump into it, because I think you're going to want to come if this interests you at all. And that is Seeking Sophia, Tracing Divine Feminine Wisdom Through Gnosticism, Mysticism, and Psychology. We are going to do a deep dive into the goddess Sophia and her underground influence across 2 millennia through her secret gospel, alchemy, art, depth psychology, the tarot, and more. We're going to talk about her Gnostic legacy. We're going to talk about the Sophia Jesus syzygy. That's a word we're going to talk about later, and her hidden influence on Christian mysticism. We're going to talk about the alchemical Sophia and her role as anima mundi, and we're going to talk about how Sophia is the portal to a new and very necessary feminine consciousness, and it's just going to be so exciting. And it's not something that's done very often. You don't actually get opportunities to learn about Sophia very often because she's such a complex figure. A lot of people are afraid to talk about her, but I'm not, because I'm a dumb Scorpio. So I really hope you join me. All the information is down in the description, and I will see you there. Okay, let's get into it. You might have heard of Sophia before, but maybe been a little confused because she's not a typical goddess like we think of Aphrodite or Isis. She's actually an emanation of the divine feminine that has existed through several different time periods in history. She doesn't really come from one specific culture as much as she reaches across millennia. Sophia today is actually a feminine name, and it comes from the Greek, which means wisdom. And absolutely, Sophia is about wisdom. And in fact, we first find her in the Book of Wisdom, in her Proverbs, describing her own power. And it's really important that in the Book of Wisdom, Sophia actually speaks of herself in the first person. She's not something that is described or just, an energy that kind of floats around. She identifies herself as being an agent of real power and divine authority. The Lord brought me forth as the first of his works, before his deeds of old. I was formed long ages ago, at the very beginning, when the world came to be. When there were no watery depths, I was given birth. When there were no springs overflowing with water, before the mountains were settled in place, before the hills, I was given birth. Before he made the world or its fields, or any of the dust of the earth. I was there when he set the heavens in place, when he marked out the horizon on the face of the deep, when he established the clouds above and fixed securely the fountains of the deep, when he gave the sea its boundary, so the waters would not overstep his command, and when he marked out the foundations of the earth. Then I was constantly at his side. I was filled with delight day after day, rejoicing always in his presence, rejoicing in his whole world and delighting in mankind. But the goddess Sophia comes from the Judeo-Christian tradition, and that's where we're going to really explore her today. She was a major figure of Gnosticism, and Gnosticism is basically a school of Christian thought that really developed in the 1st century AD. Gnosticism took a more mystical approach to the teachings of Christ and actually put more emphasis on spiritual knowledge than on orthodoxy, on the dogma of what the church believed. There are so many Gnostic texts out there, and I highly, highly, highly recommend you read some of them. They're so fantastic. And they comprise what we call the Apocrypha, which is basically the book of texts that were rejected from the Bible. Because if you didn't know, the books of the Bible are not there because those are the only books of the Bible. They were picked. Why? So there are countless gospels that were actually rejected because they didn't go along with the story that the church had chosen. I cannot catch a break. And several of these Gnostic texts mention Sophia directly, and one of these is the Pistis Sophia. And this is just such a fascinating text, and one of the most interesting things that it describes, and some of the other texts do too, is the story.
So you're not wrong, but I'm not using this parallel because like I'm trying to make a judgment with it, but I think it's probably the best parallel. So it's almost like in the same way that conspiracy culture pre-existed QAnon, but then QAnon almost kind of represented almost like a unification or a grand unified theory in some ways. That's kind of like what happened with Gnosticism. How you had these ideas swirling about, like a combination of like Greek, Persian, and Semitic ideas. But at the end of the day, like you don't really have anything that's even seen as Gnosticism until you have Christianity. In the same way that you don't really actually have Judaism until you have Christianity, because before then it's just like the tradition of the Jew. Actually, no, you probably technically do, but it's like rather you don't have Rabbinic Judaism until you have early Christianity. So it's like they exist in contrast to the other. So it's the same with paganism. Paganism is far older than Christianity, but at the same time, paganism actually didn't exist before Christianity. Pagans did, paganism didn't, if that makes any sense.
I do think you're discounting the possibility that Q was hiding in the weeds for the longest time, just waiting to come out and expose himself. You know.
Isn't that how you get a sex offender registry?
No, that's only if you're wearing a raincoat.
You mean if you're wearing a raincoat, but only a raincoat?
Well, of course, yeah.
Of the fall of Sophia, how it was actually Sophia who fell from God's grace and caused the original sin of man, not Adam and Eve. But if you want more on that fascinating story, come to my seminar. Sophia's power is one of judgment and wisdom and knowledge and divine loving participation with the earth to bring it to its ultimate fulfillment. But as Christianity spread and the patriarchal leaders started to rewrite things to fit the narrative, Sophia was actually absorbed into another Greek concept that was really important at the time, which is logos, which means the word or divine reason. This title was also given to Christ. And so this is when we have this really fascinating merge of Sophia and Christ in what a lot of scholars call the Christ-Sophia syzygy. Word of the day, syzygy, look it up. And so for many centuries, the name of Sophia was forgotten. It was as if she never existed. She had just been sort of absorbed into the figure of Christ, and the divine wisdom of Sophia was now Christ's wisdom. Until the Middle Ages, my favorite. I like princesses, and I will never stop. In the Middle Ages, there was sort of this renaissance of old mystical ideas. And there were a bunch of mystical thinkers who reached into the past and discovered Sophia. One of these mystics was Jacob Boehme, who actually wrote an entire mystical treatise on God and Sophia called Aurora. And he actually describes Sophia as being like the mirror of divine knowledge that makes it adaptable for humanity to access. So just as the moon captures the light of the sun that we can't look directly upon, Sophia captures the divine knowledge of God and reflects it back onto humanity. And I absolutely just think that is such a gorgeous image for what Sophia actually represented for the world. She was this divine mirror. She was this container of the great wisdom that we are always trying to access, but is always maybe a little bit too deep, too mysterious for us to really make part of our lives. But with this mystical renaissance of all of these ideas and of Sophia, it was, of course, the alchemists who decided to make her part of their tribe. Sophia, in some ways, actually became the alchemical goal. Now, I know when we think of alchemy, we think of the Philosopher's Stone and alchemists trying to turn lead into gold, and all of that is true. They were trying to do that stuff. But when you really study alchemy, you start to realize that there was this spiritual undertone to everything, that
So
there
I don't know
was
if you remember
a
when she
material
used the
path.
term, but anima mundi, the spirit of the world. That's what Sophia is. And so it's not just anima, like not just would it be it wouldn't just be like anima homo, it would be anima mundi, like the entire world, not just humans. So not just our consciousness, but the consciousness of the entire world, even the things that we don't consider to be part of consciousness. But it's like, it doesn't mean that. It's like we don't consider it to be a part of our consciousness, but the question is, what if we're both part of the same consciousness, but we just can't recognize each other because it's like we see a rock and, we just see matter, and then we see ourselves and we see, oh, but we're matter and we have spirit in ourselves. But like at the end of the day, if you break it down to a materialist level, there's neither spirit in either of them. So in that, like materialists would say there's neither spirit in there's neither spirit in neither, and then pantheists or panentheists would say there's spirit in both, and then I guess religious people would say, what, are you crazy? There's no spirit in, inanimate things, and therefore the only ones with spirit is humans, or humans and living beings. It's interesting, but like in religious Judaism, or at least like in Kabbalistic perspective, there is like different levels of consciousness or different levels of souls. Like everything has a soul. It's just different types.
I was going to say, I think a probably better description is Sophia would be the vibe of our unconsciousness, where it's, like you were talking about, Ariel, there's the separation that we're not aware of. And, and to me, one of the issues I have with the Blady's analysis here is she's conflating reason and wisdom, Logos and Sophia. And those were two very, very different concepts. It's like the Logos is more of a male aspect, and Sophia is a female aspect.
That's exactly what she's saying. She's saying that the two were falsely conflated by later Christianity.
Okay, I thought she was doing that herself.
No, she was making a very clear distinction, because on one hand you could have Logos being couched within Sophia, but what she's talking about is how Sophia got couched within Logos, and how Sophia basically got absorbed by the figure of Jesus.
And I guess that's where I see Sophia always existing in the figure of the Holy Spirit / Holy Ghost. And I don't see the merging with Jesus there in the same way she does. I don't see it.
Well, no, I mean, like, there are lots of cases where Sophia is basically God's wisdom, God's Sophia, not just God's Logos, but God's Sophia and God's Logos are both viewed as being embodied within Jesus. Not just like, like he represents it, but like literally embodied. And so the implication there, which on one hand, if you view Sophia as being the Holy Spirit, okay, the Holy Spirit's in him, as well as the Logos, but like, what does that really mean? Because for a lot of people, they don't distinguish between the two, because they don't know the difference. Because to them, they hear, oh, God's knowledge and the Word of God, that's both talking about Jesus, so that they don't make a distinction. but that doesn't mean that they are indistinct.
No, I get what you're saying. It's just one of those. It's the difference between, knowledge and wisdom. Those are two different but related things.
Yeah, or like awareness and almost like thought and awareness.
Well, I would say more thought and feeling. Feeling is much more of that intuition, wisdom sort of standpoint.
It's interesting though, because think about how so much of like it's not just emotions. It's like it could just be intuition, but like our society just makes feelings seem as if it's something is like that's only having to do with like, like, oh, I feel bad or I feel good, as opposed to it could just be I feel that something is this way, as opposed to I know that something is this way.
Oh no, our society deals poorly with feelings, with thoughts, with beliefs, with the whole jumbled mess of the psyche. Our society deals poorly with it. You can definitely say that, Tag.
Yeah.
That they were following of trying to transform matter, but at the same time, it was a sacred path. They were trying to transform the soul within. And so Sophia became this divine feminine partner. She became the other half of the hieroschemos, the sacred marriage, the chemical wedding, the mysterium conjunctionis. She was the feminine that the masculine within the alchemist was destined to meet and to merge with. And Sophia became an important figure for these mystical traditions that came out of the Middle Ages, that came out of the alchemical tradition and the Christian mysticism that was really popular at the time. For example, in Russian Orthodoxy, there is actually a field of study called Sophiology. And there is a sect of people who believe that Sophia is the Theotokos, the throne of God, which is a title that was once given to Isis and Mary as well, and stripped from Mary because she cannot be divine. But basically, it almost raises Sophia to the place of the fourth person of the Trinity. And we also see Sophia in this figure of the Black Madonna, who was this image of Mary that appeared all over Europe in the Middle Ages, in which Mary was depicted with black skin. And a lot of scientists have argued there was smoke in the churches and there was ash in the Middle Ages, in which Mary was depicted with black skin. And a lot of scientists have argued there was smoke in the churches and there was ash floating around and whatever. It wasn't intentional. But honestly, it doesn't even matter, because the amount of power that these figures seem to have was so much greater than any
Personally, I
representation
think it
married
matters
before.
whether or not that
Millions
was
and
intended
millions
or
of
not.
people have made pilgrimages to these Black Madonnas and worshiped them get their divine wisdom, to really
Take care of
connect with this
yourself. Have a
deeper,
good day.
more
Shabbat shalom.
profound sense of divine femininity. And honestly, I could keep going for a while about the different places that we can locate Sophia. And really, what we have to know and understand about all these different ways that Sophia has come to us is that she has always been the bearer of wisdom. And she's really important for us to study, for those of us who are invested in the divine feminine, for really growing with the divine feminine and embracing it. And also for us witches out there who want to know about the goddesses that have shaped our world. So we want to understand Sophia as an archetype. We want to understand her as a core essence that has risen and manifested in countless different representations over the ages. This is why Sophia is kind of really hard to pin down, because, like I said before, it's not just an Aphrodite who we can go to her temples and see where she was worshipped and how people depicted her. We kind of have to find Sophia in time. We have to find her in the Black Madonna and in the Gnostic Gospels and in the alchemical drawings. And what's really, really important about Sophia is that she is divine wisdom, and also that she is the great virgin. And before you get all worked up about that word, we have to understand that there is a big difference between the virgin of the past and the virgin of our puritanical patriarchal brains.
Yeah, virgin used to
Today
mean
we know
an
virginity as
unconnected woman,
chastity, as sexlessness,
or
but
like
we want to think of
connected to a
virginity
son or
actually
a
as
husband.
self-agency. To the older, more ancient mindset, virginity meant somebody who did not need to unite with a partner to have any kind of sense of self. She was not defined by being mother or wife. She was totally
So this is
her
interesting.
own being.
It
And
almost
that was
seems
what the virgin was. Sophia
like,
as an archetype is
I might be wrong, but it almost seems like the name, based on what that other theory was saying, it almost seems like Mary is even though there's a term in Hebrew for virgin, it's almost like the name for virgin could also be Mary, because it's like within that context, not within someone who's been unwed, but someone who is like of self-agency, at least according to that one. I don't know how much I buy it, but what do you think?
No, I can see where you're going with that one. What jumps out to me is flipping it around and trying to apply it in the male sense. So you're basically saying that as long as a man doesn't get married and hook himself up to a woman, he can keep billing himself as a virgin. And it's like, it strains the modern sensibility of the word. And the other one is with that alchemical, connection there, where basically it's like you're doing alchemy in Sophia's cup. She didn't mention anything about leather or medicated bandages, and I'm confused by that tag.
I'm sorry. Do we need to get a support group going for you? Because honestly, that could be very traumatizing if you were expecting that and then you didn't get that.
Well, I mean, it is the truth after all. Tag.
Yeah. Nobody can hide the truth. The truth. Yeah, just crack a whip and then now you know it's the truth. Oh, interesting. It's an interesting idea. Graham basically said my piece. That's what 3D said.
entirely self-contained, and so she is the keeper of the wisdoms. She does not need to relate to a partner, to a husband, or even to a child to be a goddess of real authority. At her core, Sophia is the keeper of the mysteries. She is divine wisdom. She is the way to the truth. And most importantly, she is the world soul. And this is probably Sophia's most important role, and one that kind of brings us into the modern day, into the world of depth psychology. Did you really think we're going to get through video without talking about Jung? Carl Jung was a psychologist who believed that there was this psychic force called the anima, basically the internalized feminine, this archetype of divine femininity that at its highest stage was Sophia. Which means in our full embrace of the divine feminine, it is Sophia that we meet, who is the container of our souls and the souls of all the world. And that is just such a beautiful image to me. Sophia as the anima mundi is this thing I carry with me all the time that connects me to the divine feminine and reminds me of my purpose of being on this journey into the feminine itself. I want to know the depth of my own soul, and I know that Sophia in some ways carries that for me. And this is why so many tarotists connect with the High Priestess, because the High Priestess is Sophia. Arthur Waite, who is the intellectual creator of the Rider-Waite deck, came from this mystical tradition that was born in the Middle Ages. He was a member of the Order of the Golden Dawn, and he absolutely had met and knew Sophia in some way.
The Order of the
But it is
Golden Dawn
clear
does
in
not date
her
to the Middle Ages.
representation in the blue robes that she wears that he knew that Sophia was the keeper of wisdom, and that
Wait,
is exactly who
did she say that it did?
In the Middle Ages.
Yeah. She was saying that he was
Came from this
tracing his
mystical
tradition to
that
the
was
Middle
born
Ages.
in the Middle Ages. He was a member of the Order of the Golden Dawn, and he
I mean, you can trace it
absolutely
back,
had met
not like
and
the
knew
actual
Sophia in
tradition
some way.
itself.
And it is
It's like in
clear
the same way that
her
you can trace
representation in the blue robe.
Kabbalah back to ancient Jewish mysticism, but that doesn't mean that ancient Jewish mysticism was the Kabbalah that we have.
robes that
Well,
she
I
wears.
see it more like the
He knew.
Freemasons tracing it back to Hiram Abiff.
Fair enough. Oh, that's why I feel like if someone's not but see, that's the thing. I'm like, at least with me, I'm aware when I am like saying something that's like maybe spurious, but I feel like with that, like she's just so sure of herself, and that I'm not making a judgment because a lot of people do that. I do that, and that's the thing. It's a blind spot, unless she's just trying to propagate the idea, and she does know, but I don't think that's probably the case. They stole most traditions from Freemasons and other smaller secret orders. Yeah, and then Thelema and was it the OTO stole stuff from them, right?
Yeah. The OTO and Order of the Golden Dawn had huge amount of overlap. I was going to say the other one is she doesn't really get Jung if she think Jung believed in the collective unconscious. Jung tended not to believe; he tended to go with no and go from personal experience. Tag.
So like believe versus like, I mean, isn't that kind of splitting hairs though?
Well, it's sort of like most people, most Christians believe Jesus rose from the dead. They don't have any, it's different than their belief that the sky is blue. And Jung was much more on he goes with the, again, it's like when he was asked, about if he believed in God, and he sat there and said, I don't believe, I know. And it's goes with personal experience. He spent a lot of time with the collective unconscious and his whole creative imagining and things like that. So that's why he had no use for the Theosophists or Rudolf Steiner, because they were basically writing from hearsay, ancient scripture sort of stuff and channeling. And he basically was going from his personal experience. Tag.
That Sophia was the keeper of wisdom, and that is exactly who the high priestess is too. When we think of the high priestess, we think of intuition and we think of connecting, with our psychicness and really knowing what path we're on. But when we expand that and we look at Sophia as this beautiful emanation of wisdom throughout time, it becomes so much deeper. We can look at the high priestess as being the guide to the inner soul, not only trusting our intuition, but taking us into the depths of ourselves, where that intuition comes from. She is a keeper of the mysteries of life that we are always called to approach, that we are circling around for all our lives. And so if all of this is interesting to you, if you are tingling a little bit like I am even talking about it, I really, really recommend that you come to my seminar on Sophia. She is somebody we really don't talk about enough. We talk about the dark goddess and we talk about sex magic, and we don't talk about Sophia. And to me, she is probably one of the most important sides of the divine feminine for us to continue the journey. So I highly recommend you come. We're going to be talking about so many different exciting things, and this is just a taste of what we're going to get into. So I really hope I see you there, and thanks for joining me and indulging me a little bit and just kind of fangirling about my favorite goddess. I'm just so grateful that you are here. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, and I hope you just have a beautiful, meaningful day.
Well, that took 50 minutes to record like a 15-minute video.
I think Nacho likes having a dog in his house. What do you think?
I think Fritz just...
Hey, thank you for a great question. I would argue that the vilification of Asherah arose within the context of Josiah's campaign of cult.
Dr. Dan McClellan is amazing. Y'all should check him out if you haven't subscribed.
So we need to know a little bit of historical background in order to understand what Josiah was getting at. Prior to the reign of Hezekiah, around a century before Josiah, the archaeological data indicate that there were cult sites and private shrines and temples all over the lands of Israel and Judah, and there's no indication that anybody had a problem with it. Adonai would be worshipped alongside Asherah and other deities. Under the reign of Hezekiah, there seems to be an initial shift. And we have the invasion of the Assyrian king Sennacherib likely to blame for this. Because Sennacherib comes in to try to restore Judah to vassalage and devastates the landscape, destroys cities, destroys cult sites and temples all over the place. And we also have some indication that Hezekiah may have hidden some temples in order to protect them from this coming invasion. The temple at Arad, for instance, when it was uncovered in the 60s, initially scholars said, oh, this is one of the high places that Hezekiah destroyed. But the cult site wasn't really destroyed. The divine images, the incense altars were just kind of laid on their side. And then the whole thing was buried in about 6 feet of earth, which many scholars now argue would better fit an intentional decommissioning and hiding of the temple to protect it from this coming invasion, with the goal of later uncovering it and recommissioning it, which unfortunately for them never happened, but fortunately for us helped to preserve a lot of the site, which includes indications of the worship of other entities, not just Adonai. And so the combination of hiding some cult sites and of the destruction of most of the rest of the cult sites creates what scholars refer to as a de facto cult centralization. In other words, there's only one main functioning cult site now, and that's the temple in Jerusalem, the city that didn't get destroyed. And so the kings between Hezekiah and Josiah likely tried to restore a lot of the worship that was going on before, which was not seen as problematic. And this probably was just barely getting off the ground. And then we have Josiah, who probably saw all of these resources, all of this attention, all this power, all this wealth being funneled into the temple in Jerusalem, and decided, hey, kind of like it this way. Let's keep it this way. But to keep it that way, you can't just say, you know, I decree that this is how it's going to be. And so we have the production of the Deuteronomistic literature, which most scholars believe.
Hi, this is HaElyonit here to reveal another one of Miriam's secret. I'm sitting in Tel Dor on the Mediterranean coast of northern Israel in a sacred ancient temple on the sea. And I'll be singing a sacred song of the sea. Sit back, relax, imagine going to a very, very quiet place with yourself. It takes you back into the womb, into wherever is quiet and safe and kind.
Hello, apostates. This is the Apostates Playground. This was going to be the beginning of a 2.0 format and just cruising along with a new workflow.
Ooh, this looks really interesting.
Then the Supreme Court went and
the last thing
decided
was
to
cool.
start taking away rights and fucked that up. So, I don't know, maybe no more 2.0. I am Phineas the Apostate.
And I'm CC version 1.27.
You might be where the podcast as a whole ends
Supreme
up.
Court.
Yeah.
What?
So it might be where the podcast as a whole ends up, just on 1.27. We are talking about God's ex-wife who married her son and just kind of fucked off into the ocean, Asherah.
What?
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Okay.
First, before I get to expanding on that, there is a couple little pieces of housekeeping I wanted to touch on before the row over row. There was a new logo, and I have not shut up about this, but I'm going to mention it again because it's in my notes and words mentioning. It was by Angelina Jasper. If you like it, she can be found on Twitter, Angelina_Jasper. So moving on to who is Asherah. Asherah or Asherah or Ashira, because I'm not I'm not really sure how to anglicize that name, so I said it all the ways I can think of. That way everybody can be mad at me if they want to be. In Canaanite mythology is a goddess who is also the wife of El. El being relevant because El is part of where Elohim comes from, in that El is God and Elohim is something like the only God that matters. Really, baby, there's no one else. Those other gods don't mean anything to me. Why aren't you listening? Can we not talk about the golden calf again? Before all that drama, Asherah was El's wife and probably a sea goddess. There was a sea goddess named Ethrat, which is apparently a cognate of Shera, but information on this can be hard to come by because it turns out there's not a lot of existing copies of the Akkadian Encyclopedia of World Religions.
Shins and
So
tops
by
are
having the word gospel
interchangeable.
Encyclopedia
So
of World Religions,
Asherah
that's
could also
whites.
be Atara.
Because the word in Akkadian was spelt firstly not in Hebrew, but as Etzret, ATRT, which Akkadian is a Semitic language similar to Hebrew, and they also, neither one of them were big on vowels. I'm sure a lot of listeners, but not all listeners, know that vowels, the dots and ticks in modern Hebrew that represent vowels are a relatively recent addition, given how old the language is. It was a common theme in Semitic languages. So in the Ugaritic text, it was spelled vowelless. And anytime you try to get into not Judaism specific Semitic things, you're inundated with the Bible, and it can make the information really hard to sift through. So with that kind of disclaimer, talking about the Ugaritic text, they mention her primarily having shrines in Tyre and Sidon.
Sidon? Oh, that's interesting. That's I think that's the name of a character from the game Breath of the Wild, from the Mer people called the Zora. I mean, anybody listening probably already knows about Zelda.
Oh my God,
yeah.
Probably, but that's interesting.
Wait, Zora?
Yeah, like
Zora isn't
according to
similar to
ZeldaUniverse.net, and probably my Hyrule Historia, if I ever opened it. Now I'm thinking about it. It's likely the case that either the city or the Bible character is where the inspiration for Prince Sidon's name came from. I think it's the coastal city instead of the guy from that big dumb book of genocide, probably, because awkward.
Most likely.
Wait,
although,
what?
Speaking of genocide, I
think it's the coastal city instead of the guy from that big dumb book of genocide, probably, because awkward.
Most likely.
Two are the same, genius.
Although, speaking of genocide, I don't think this actually has anything to do with genocide. I just find segues hard to write.
Well, I was feeling very comfortable that she actually came to the conclusion that it was more than likely to come from the ancient world reference, like the Bible or the city, than it was from the video game had made it up, and then they inserted it into the Bible.
No. She was talking about whether, whether the city, whether it came from the city or from the character in the Bible, who's the eponymous ancestor of the city.
No, I got that she did that. I was for a second there, I was afraid she was going to think the video game took priority.
Nowadays, you never know what people would say.
Exactly.
Hubar, dating back to 1500 to 1200 BCE, that ancient epic poem of King Carrot of Hubar, dating back to 1500 to 1200. The Ugaritic texts are an ancient epic poem of King Carrot of Hubar, dating back to 1500 to 1200 BCE, that aren't super important here, but I think anthropology is neat, and I'll be damned if I study it in university for no reason. Tyre and Sidon are coastal cities in Lebanon and are two of the oldest inhabited places on the planet, which is mostly a fun fact, but also serves as a bit of background information insofar as when this information takes place. Lebanon is also directly north of modern Israel, which is an important fact because of the fact that the biblical texts are a mixture of northern and southern kingdom mythology and history. So they would have known about Lebanon. They believe they mentioned Lebanon in the Old Testament, and they would have been aware of the deities there. But the important point for the moment, put the rest of that in your pocket, is to say that she was popular with sailors and fishermen. There's also mention in the Ugaritic texts of Rubit Atharit Yum, which translates to the lady who traverses the sea, or the lady who treads on the sea, with an allusion to a dragon, which is why now Leviathan in the show's canon will be recognized as a sexy sea goddess standing on the head of a giant and epic serpent like a boss.
Found my new god, should I ever decide on having one, I guess. The lady who traverses the sea is such a badass title. She definitely condones dragging men into their watery depths, and as a misandrist, I approve.
Oh yeah, no, it's the sea is like the earthly.
As a misandrist versus the sea is such a badass title. She definitely condones dragging men into their watery depths, and as a misandrist, I approve.
Oh yeah, no, it's the sea is like the earthly model of fuck around and find out.
Yeah. We still haven't finished finding out. We're still in the finding out phase of the sea, and gradually approaching the fucking around. Well, we're approaching the fuck around part, and we're getting closer and closer to the find out. And I'm not looking forward to that.
No, I mean, because like we can't be in the air over the sea fucking around without finding out. I mean, Amelia Earhart, the Myanmar Airlines flight, the Titanic, Cthulhu.
I'm talking about what's down beneath.
When we find the Innsmouth people.
I did a whole. I mean, not a fan of him because he was like a terrible person.
Because his cat was named a racial slur.
Oh yeah, and he had to say it so many times. But apparently he was just
he did.
And other races too. But like I'm a fan of the horror stuff that's come out of it. Like Lovecraft Country, by the way, is pretty good. I like that. But no, I'm a fan about the horror and stuff that's come from it and the way people have shaped it and done other stuff. I did read some of the Innsmouth stuff. I'm less worried about that fuckery and more worried about like stuff like the I want to say the color out space. Is that the one? Things deep within underneath that we don't know what they are and haven't seen them yet. And when we find out, they're going to come back for us and be very pissed. Originally, I was supposed to start this with saying that I read a lot of H.P. Lovecraft stuff because I had a period like a couple years ago where I fell in that rabbit hole of reading his horror. So
yeah, I mean, real world concerns. I'm worried about there actually being a Leviathan in the sea that is aligned with the octopuses who have started taking our litter and like building cities and making tools.
They're doing better than we did with our litter.
They're recycling. They're like, we need to strike an alliance with the sea before fucking Ashera rides her dragon out of the ocean, leading an army of just cephalopods in mech suits. Because that's the side I want to be on. I want to be on the cephalopod army and Dr. Pepper mech suits side. Although, to segue back, there is a weird piece of information from one of the articles that I was working on for this, which was from the Journal of Biblical Literature, that suggests that it's not likely that she would have been a totally awesome sea goddess who is awesome and great, because it would presuppose a confrontational relationship with water, which would be odd for a sea goddess, but that doesn't make any sense because, like, as far as I'm aware, if Poseidon didn't think that like horses and fish should fuck themselves.
I don't know what you're getting at here.
So when I drive, I don't have a confrontational relationship with the road. If anything, my issue is just with the place that I'm at being not the place I need to go. Saying that traversal makes a relationship with the thing you're traversing adversarial seems to say more about how Dave views the floor that he's walking on than it does about the translation of Atzerat's Yom.
Oh, so Dave is basically saying that she couldn't be the lady who traverses the sea. I don't understand.
That's kind of his argument. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me either. It's hard to explain. It's a weird thought that Day had, or there's some really inside baseball information about ancient Canaanite spatial domain relationships, because like I said, the idea that her traversing the sea means that she is in a adversarial or confrontational relationship with the sea, like your response of not understanding is fair, because that doesn't make sense, is okay. My point. I couldn't really take Day's argument and twist it into a way that it made sense at all. There is alternately the possibility that refers to a holy place instead of referring to one of her attributes. Kind of like how Bethel means house of El, Beth meaning house. So, and that's called Bethel because Jacob took a nap there one time in the Old Testament. And based on the information that I have and the fact that none of the articles or books I read really touched on it, I'm not comfortable making a conclusive claim on what it means, but it makes more sense to me that it would refer to her as a like domain thing. Especially given the fact that she's referred to as Ashera multiple times, whereas God is never referred to Bethel, or referred to as Bethel. So if it was a place, it wouldn't make sense that she's referred to it as a name. Kind of like how I never call you your house as a name.
Okay, yeah. I was thinking I was along the right lines, but yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be weird.
If anybody walked up on me and went, hey, Phineas's shitty trailer, that would be bizarre. So to me, for the moment, it's an open question, but I'm leaning towards it being who she is in the show's canon, which admittedly is some motivated reasoning, because it sounds badass, or it sounds canon. So to me,
weird. Okay, yeah.
A name to as Bethel. So if it was a place, it wouldn't make sense that she's referred to it as a name. Kind of like how I never call you your house as a name.
Okay, yeah. I was thinking I was along the right lines, but yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be weird.
If anybody walked up on me and went, hey, Phineas's shitty trailer, that would be bizarre. So to me, for the moment, it's an open question, but I'm leaning towards it being who she is in the show's canon, which admittedly is some motivated reasoning, because it sounds badass, or it sounds more badass. Ashera is also mentioned as being a mother goddess associated with Ninhursag and Namu from Sumer and Isis from Egypt. Her mother goddess aspect is one in which she has 70 children, which is a hell of a task. These 70 kids are apparently linked to the 7 guardian angels of Israel that is supposedly in First Enoch. I had trouble finding that and like nailing down a definite this is where it is. And in Arabic, these are the Seb'in bin Creatrix, the 70 sons of Athra. And in Arabic mythology, Athra is a sun goddess. So, but that happens when you take different countries and start finding equivalents in gods. You find the aspects change over time. And little known facts, the best pantheons all have sun goddesses as women.
I can't think of anything misandrous to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't prove it, but I'll stand by it. And one day we might start doing profiles on pagan pantheons and their sun goddesses, and we'll prove it.
So there's also Khonshu. And as Khonshu, the mother and fertility goddess, there's a weird connection that I spotted that I have questions about, and apparently there are just fucking no answers. As Khonshu, Asherah is usually shown wearing a Hathor wig, holding a snake and flowers, or on occasion, holding a big snake in both hands. Gigi. So my question is this: does the Hathor connection lead to big snake? Asherah is usually shown wearing a Hathor wig, holding a snake and flowers, or on occasion, holding a big snake in both hands. Gigi. So my question is this: does the Hathor connection lead to in both hands? Is usually shown wearing apparently there are just fucking no answers. As Khonshu, Asherah is usually shown wearing a Hathor wig, holding a snake and flowers, or on occasion, holding a big snake in both hands. Gigi. So my question is this: does the Hathor connection that I spotted that I have questions about, and apparently there are just fucking no answers. As Khonshu, Asherah is usually shown wearing a Hathor wig, holding a snake and flowers, or on occasion, holding a big snake in both hands. Gigi. So my question is this: does the Hathor connection lead to a Harmostus connection? Harmostus is Hathor's son and is a music god. Most famously, Harmostus is known to be worshipped as a golden calf. So my question would then be how closely related were...
Wait, what?
Wig or just fucking no answers. As Khonshu, Asherah is usually shown wearing a Hathor wig, holding a snake and flowers, or on occasion, holding a big snake in both hands. Gigi. So my question is this: does the Hathor connection lead to a Harmostus connection? Harmostus is Hathor's son and is a music god. Most famously, Harmostus is known to be worshipped as a golden calf. So my question would then be how closely related were Khonshu and Harmostus in mythology? Would it be reasonable to conclude that if Khonshu, the Semitic goddess, and Hathor, the Egyptian goddess, were equivalent, and they may not have been, there's a lot of maybes and ifs here, would it be fair to count Harmostus as one of the 70 sons? And in that case, would it be Israel going back to a form of Asherah worship by worshiping her kid? If Asherah is equivalent to Khonshu and Khonshu is equivalent to Hathor, then by the transitive property or hypothetical syllogism, Asherah is Khonshu. Would it be the Israelites going back and worshiping one of Asherah's kids as Hathor? I need an archaeologist, a logician, and an exorcist.
Okay, I need to make sure I understood all that. Depicted wearing the wig of Hathor, and you're wondering if wearing the wig suggests she is also Hathor? Hathor's son is Harmostus, who is the golden calf you referenced earlier, and you are suggesting that he's one of Asherah's 70 children? Overall, I'm also just shuddering at the thought of that many children. That's a nightmare. That is a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine keeping sane with that personal elementary school of children. And, well, I'm not sure there actually is any there to cover. The series won't dwell on that too much. It's kind of just padding out this episode. But as we get closer to Exodus, it's something I'll definitely keep my eye out for, because after the Israelites were released from Egypt, they were worshiping the golden calf, which is Harmostus, the son of Hathor, who is represented in Khonshu, who is seen as equivalent to Asherah. So yes, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'll be reading more about Egyptian history and mythology the closer we get to it. But irrelevant. But
motif usually refers to like headstones, but it still has this context of containing the presence, even if it's not literal.
They end up not being really answered very well because it gets hard to track deities in a linear way as they progress from place to place, right? Thor is equated to both Jupiter and Hercules by the Romans when they got up to fighting the Germans. It kind of gets all mixed up, but there is a precedent for ancient gods being equated to right? Thor is equated to both Jupiter and Hercules by the Romans when they got up to fighting the Germans. It kind of gets all mixed up, but there is a precedent for ancient gods being equated to in Thor's case, both a god and that god's half-kid. And I mainly mention the Khonshu Hathor thing because it is something that occurred to me that makes sense from a continuity perspective in the timeline of Asherah.
What does it mean
at the end of this episode? Just
does
to
it mean
summarize,
demigod?
because this one is a little shorter. Asherah was the consort of El and probably also Baal. She was a sea goddess, a sun goddess.
A lover, a child, a mother, a sinner, and a saint.
She does not feel ashamed. Also, she very much likes trees, which will come up and is actually really important. She also might be the equivalent of a sexy cow goddess and could be the face of that shattered the Canaanite religion. Next time on the Apostates Playground, squiddly diddly doo, shattered the Canaanite. Also might be the equivalent of a sexy cow goddess and could be the face of that shattered the Canaanite religion. Next time on the Apostates Playground, squiddly diddly doo.
Yeah, we definitely need to talk more about her, especially since she started out saying she was God's ex-wife who just fucked off into the ocean. No, actually, that's a whole mood right there.
Yeah, I probably also oversold that.
No,
next time on the Apostates Playground, squiddly diddly doo.
Yeah, we definitely need to talk more about her, especially since she started out saying she was God's ex-wife who just fucked off into the ocean. No, actually, that's a whole mood right there.
Yeah, I probably also oversold that. She probably started off there also.
Her old place the whole time she was married to Yahweh, which is a pretty good idea because, he's a bad husband. You got to have a backup plan.
That's true. She's really fortunate to have been able to keep her finances separate.
Always keep your finances separate.
It's really good advice. Store it in a mattress, lockbox. Cut open your neighbor, store it in there like they're a tauntaun. That is it for this episode. It was shorter than they have been, and if all goes right, that will be the new norm. But I don't have a lot of faith that everything will go right. And it hopefully will turn into more shorter episodes and longer series because that will allow more episodes more quickly and will let me research more thoroughly, which has been eating at me. So I have been Phineas at the letter X, Essential Panda.
I've been She Who Drowns Foolish Men at Shake a Shaman on Twitter. That handle might be changing in a bit. I'm not sure yet.
The show is at Apostasy Powered. The website is theapostatesplayground.com. The Patreon is patreon.com/apostatesplayground. The PayPal is paypal.me/chat is the $ existentizoid. My bank account number is and hate mail, comments, and love letters can be sent to powered@apostasy@gmail.com. I really need to start writing up these intros and outros to really carve them down. And I'm bad at checking email, good at checking DMs. I don't fucking know. I quit.
Ah, that was interesting. What did you think?
I was going to say, yeah, I call it interesting. They got oversimplified take in play on quite a bit places.
Definitely. Oh, that's cool. Wait, is this more interesting? I think they might have done more on her, but yeah, that'd be cool to watch more of that some other time. We're going to. Oh, interesting. They have one that was 44 minutes. Yeah, this looks like an interesting channel. I definitely subscribed. Y'all should as well if this type of stuff interests you. But anyway, yeah, I think we're. Oh, what was this? Didn't we mention to where earlier? So no, you're thinking of Atirat maybe, but there. I personally think that Taweret and Atirat might have a connection.
No, I was looking into it. Yeah, Taweret is basically a version of Asherah that was worshipped in Egypt in the 18th, 19th dynasty.
Interesting. Yeah, here you have Taweret commonly bears epithets: Lady of Heaven, Mistress of the Horizon, she who removes water, Mistress of Pure Water, Lady of the Birth House. Interesting. I think his point was like it was more so just kind of like comedy, almost like stand up with a sprinkle of. I mean, also I think he got an anthropology degree in college. He said, but I'm not sure. But anyway, anyone have any thoughts before we close out?
Nothing in particular. It was fun as always.
Yeah, I'm just going to wait just in case someone has a response. And I'll see if there's anything that this channel did that was quick that we could playlists. Let's see.
Now's the time to train for an in-demand career you're passionate about.
Make sure you have notifications on. That way you get, notifications whenever we're live. I mean, that's possible, but I personally think that it's more likely that it was connected to Asherah or to Hathor. Probably either Hathor or potentially even a reference to El or Baal, because they're also referred to as bulls.
I would describe that as more of a connection, because just because it's connected to one doesn't mean it doesn't also have a connection to the opposite bull.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with a pluriform interpretation like you have in the Bible. But let's see, the link with Hathor is a common one to where it often wears the cow's horns and sun disc that are characteristic of Hathor. Interesting. So this is a prayer to Tanit. Not necessarily because you have to. The whole point of the golden calf was that they didn't give up all the Egyptian traditions. Alternatively, it could have been that they didn't give up their Canaanite traditions. And so, here, HaElyonit figure, the one who made this. Unfortunately, I don't think there's like a proper channel that would support her there. And on that note, definitely going to do more of these, and as I go through the paper, I'll share with everyone what it's starting to look like. But yeah, on that note, here. In one litany, a score is proclaimed again and again as great radiant bull, your name in heaven, and also called son of Anu, lord of Karkara, twin brother of Enki, lord of abundance. It could also be a reference to, I think was it Atik, the bull of heaven in Canaan. There's a bunch of different traditions to this. But anyway, I'm going to take off now. Any last words, but any last remarks before we head off, Graham?
Yeah, I was going to sit there and say you also have the bull of heaven from the Epic of Gilgamesh that. Inanna gets called down in order to fight Gilgamesh and Enkidu.
Yeah. Anyway, on that note, take care, everyone.
Want to tell the Rebbe the words of the new song that we're singing with Mashiach, right? So I'm just going to read them. Am Yisrael, have no fear. Mashiach will be here this year. We want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. Okay? We want Mashiach now.